Start the meeting by standing for the pledge, please. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Angie, take roll call, please.
Bush.
Here.
Chambers.
Here.
Dunn.
Here.
Eisner.
Here.
Here. Okay. Lindsay.
Here.
I can see him.
That was the he tried.
I think he said yeah.
Okay. Steffes.
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes. Okay. Recognitions.
Last week was School Board Appreciation Week, so members present, and we will get it to the members that couldn't make it tonight. Before you is an engraved glass and an engraved coaster produced by Mr. Carey's shop using their laser engraver. So both of those are gifts and appreciation for the work that you do as our school board.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Wisconsin School Music Association accreditation.
Yes. The Middle Point Music School Music Department has just been honored for meeting the criteria for the 2019-2020 Wisconsin School Music Association accreditation, WSMA. Wisconsin School Music Association membership, district and solo ensemble, festival participation, concert group participation from each of the performing groups. This honor recognizes our school's outstanding participation in WSMA programming and distinguishes our school's music program. The WSMA applauds our efforts to provide valuable music education opportunities for our students. So our middle school was recognized by the state association. So very, very good honor for them to have.
All right, next we have the approval of the minutes.
I just see if I could ask for just an update or correction. On the minutes of the September 28th meeting where we had the results of the reopening advisory committee, is there a reason we can't have it state that 58% of the results showed that they wanted students back in school more often? Because that's what the results of the survey was.
So you just want that added to
Just
the,
add that to the minutes.
so do you want to make the motion to approve with that?
I will do so.
I'll second.
Any more discussion on the minutes?
Oh, Doc Lindsay, you're on mute if you were speaking.
Sorry, I am speaking. I think that's not really clear because you're taking it out of context. The majority, I believe, 61 or 2%, only wanted the kids back in school if it was safe. Everyone agrees we like our kids back in school full time, but I think if you read through the document further, and I would defer to the advisory group, that it was the majority of opinions that only if it was safe. Am I right or wrong, Annika or Justin?
That's correct.
I agree that that we need to word this carefully, but I would say the way it's currently written, where the only statement from the parent survey is that 80% are satisfied with virtual and 20% feel there's a need for improvement, is not really doing justice to the discussion we had around those results. So I would agree with Gary that something needs to be changed, and maybe we don't need to put a lot of detail in there, and reference that the survey was discussed. And if in the future somebody needs to reference it, they could pull up the actual results.
Yep, but I think the way that that is proposed in that motion is it mischaracterizes what was in the document or in the discussions.
Do you want to modify that at all, Gary, or
Just modify it to fit Doc's needs. I don't care. I'm not going to argue about
just
that.
something to change it around a little bit? Okay. Okay.
I have one
Let me
question.
clarify that. My understanding of how the survey was written is that the answer to that question, the 58%, and I should bring it up, but The answer, the question was, like, even now in a pandemic, what would you prefer for your students? And I think it was a 58% in-person response. A lot of the clarifying comments were, I would support my kid if it was safe to return. You know, so there were a lot of clarifying comments that, and there were comments either way. But I think the actual question was basically, if, even in a pandemic, would you prefer in-person versus virtual? Is that correct, Justin, that number one question there, how it was worded?
I'd have to look that up here. I guess I would ask, what's the intent of having that called out specifically?
You're asking me the question?
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Because of every time we send a survey out, no matter what it's for, we relate to the results of the survey. And the board usually, whether we go to a referendum or to go to school, or whether we go to a hybrid model, we look at the results of surveys and we take that into extreme consideration. That's why that's the only reason I requested that the results of the survey be put on.
Okay, I wasn't asking why as an attack to your question, just out of curiosity.
And furthermore,
Yes,
the testimony, the discussion that happens in a school board meeting, the minutes are the official record of that. And if that was part of last month's meeting, or the last meeting we had, because of the special meeting, that should be reflected in the minutes. And I don't know how important minutes are nowadays with tape recorded meetings. Maybe they're not as important. Just a point I wanted to make.
Okay. So, are you looking something up there?
I'm trying to pull
I think Gary's motion is well stated. And I'd like to leave it as it was stated.
Leave it as it is.
You're gonna leave it as it is with the wording of,
Maybe we could get a second on the motion.
yep, but just to clarify the wording, so we know.
With 58% stating that they want to be in person.
That they want to be in person.
Yeah, with 4 or 5 days, I don't even remember what the exact number was on the question.
When is it safe, or do you want to leave it as this? Just to add that little bit of a snippet that way.
Yeah, if you feel it's safe, that's fine.
Okay, then we're good, I
Then we're
think.
good, that's good.
Right.
Well, was that in the question on the survey?
See, that wasn't, no, you're right, that wasn't in the question. So,
So if we're not skewing anything,
no, I understand.
yeah, we could put frosting on it all night long.
Okay, all right, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on this? All right, Angie, call the question, please.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Bush.
Yes.
Dunn.
Yes.
Eisner.
yes,
Lindsay.
No.
Stefas.
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. Okay, on to communications, any board communications received?
I had a couple, but if anybody else wants to go first, they certainly can.
No, I'm fine.
Okay.
I'll go first. So I have two different topics, and I received feedback from multiple sources on each of these. The first one is around a junior high basketball season. I received feedback from a handful of parents of middle school basketball players regarding our decision not to support a middle school basketball season. And they just wanted us to note the physical, the mental, and the social impacts that decision has on students. And one of the students shared a perspective around some of the things the WIAA is trying to do to make that safer. I'm sure we're gonna talk a lot about safety throughout this meeting and about what we can do in a safe manner. So I don't know we need to spend a lot of time on that right at this moment. But one of the things, an idea that was shared was, could we, particularly at that level, even give kids a chance to practice, even if we didn't allow them to play games against kids from other schools, but if that would be an opportunity, at least for them, to be together and to be physically active. And if there would be a way to do that that wouldn't put any additional risks around us being able to get kids in school more of the time. So the feedback that I received and wanted to pass on, and we can incorporate it into other discussions we have tonight about what we can and can't do safely, or how and when we can think about doing something more than we're doing today. The other topic that, of course, I'm sure everybody received feedback on was around a back to school plan. So I've had several conversations, phone calls, and emails regarding a back to school plan. And just a few insights that that I received around those, or through those conversations, were some talk about, is there fear in creating a solid next phase, a solid plan? Is some of the reluctance around putting a plan in place that will move forward too quickly? I'm hoping that will be addressed tonight as we talk about the scorecard from the ad hoc committee. There was some conversation around would increasing the time we have kids in school, particularly at the elementary level, if we were able to increase it from, say 2 days a week to 3 days a week, does that really help families feel less stress? It may allow us more in-person time to provide different educational opportunities, but from a home life standpoint, does that make life any easier for the families in our community? And then some conversation around the equality of education that we're providing to our students who are in the hybrid program versus those who are 100% virtual, and what that needs to look like. Or is it that we provide the best possible education under any circumstance? And does the fact that families could opt into a 100% virtual model, but the default mode was a hybrid model without the option of being 100% in person, impact the way we approach that? So lots of questions and insights and thoughts, but no actual silver bullet that solves any problems. But wanted to share some of the things I'd heard.
Thank you. Any more board communications?
I have received a few.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
A few emails on back to school also, and the somewhat lack of urgency to try to get our kids back in school more. Just to reiterate what Joni said there. And I did receive 2 correspondence from parents, citizens of the community, with the board's lack of action on the homecoming process. And it doesn't sound like this is anything new. The first time it's been brought up, there's evidence in our school that there has been a request before to look at homecoming and homecoming court, and it seems like nothing's ever been done about that. So there is evidence out there. We're on the topic of homecoming. There's a parent reached out to me. There's a potential homecoming dance off-site. So I don't know if you're aware of that, Mitch.
I am.
Okay.
That a parent sent me, both Mr. Ross and myself forwarded that email on to us, and then Dr. Dunn had seen it and sent it on as well.
Okay.
So
you're right. That's all.
Okay. I had one, and it was directed at the elementary office staff and the nurse. And it was basically kudos on how great of a job they did with the transition. This one, a parent had some symptoms, and so they had to hold the kids back and got tested, was negative, but just the whole process, it was very streamlined and easy. And that parent reached out to me and just wanted me to make sure that the elementary staff and school nurse, so she wanted to let you know that you were appreciated and made things very easy for her. So good job on that. Thank you. That's all I have. Citizen communications. Anybody?
Hello?
There you go. You're up. Start by stating your name, please.
My name's Travis Halverson. I'm a parent of Cheyenne and Christopher Halverson. Might be off topic, and we might not be there yet. I don't know how this all goes, but I got some concerns with this whole virtual and going back to school. As of right now, my kids are only going, they're only getting about 2 hours worth of classes throughout the week. Like my daughter, she goes to school all day on a Monday, 2 hours Tuesday, 2 hours Wednesday, 2 hours Thursday, and then nothing on Friday. I'm a little concerned on this because I guess I'm looking at it as why isn't it set up as a virtual class? Why do we have 2 hours, 2 hours, 2 hours? Why can't these kids be going to their classes virtually throughout the day? It doesn't have to be a full 8-hour day. We could knock it down to a 6-hour day. That way they have interaction with their teachers throughout their school day. They have interaction with the kids for socializing, and then they're getting some sort of stability throughout the day too, and have to be held accountable. If they don't log on in time, it's a tardy. It shouldn't be held any different than a regular normal school day. And I'm really confused on this whole point of, I get it. We're in tough times. It's kind of hard, but these kids are home. These kids have no structure throughout the day. Why not give them structure? There's no reason that they can't be doing an actual class online, just like we're doing right now, and be able to socialize and understand and actually learn something. Because right now, I'm told that the teachers are available for emails and questions on Wednesdays. Well, please explain. I want the opportunity for somebody to explain. Maybe I'm not grasping it, but to me, I've talked to a lot of parents. I work in road construction over the road. I deal with from Dane County all the way down to Iowa, Grant, Greene. All these parents are all at a loss on why this isn't virtual, and they could still be doing schooling online virtually and get more education out of it than 2 hours one day. I'm just confused.
Can I ask what grade level you're referring to?
I have one in 8th and I have a freshman.
Mitch, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, this is Miss Dahl, and I spoke with Mr. Halverson on the phone. I think it was last week, and I told him that when teachers are not Zooming with 8th graders, they're Zooming with 7th graders. So they're not always going to be available to do virtual with his child all day long. For instance, if he has 8th grade math and they're doing a Zoom, well then also they're going to be Zooming with the 7th grade, and there's different standards and different curriculum. And I believe Cheyenne in high school would be the same, because if she's not in school, those high school teachers are dealing with another grade level.
Correct.
But I guess I look at it as why would their schedule, you don't have to change their schedule. Their schedule is already set from day one when they went to school. Say they went to school 5 days. That teacher, they have those classes no matter what. So why ain't those classes still set up? I get what she's saying, that she has different, that math teacher has a 7th grade class. Well, he should be teaching a 7th grade class. That means Chris would be in a different class then. He'd be doing science or something like that.
It's set up by small groups, though. It's not the actual schedule that you would see in Skyward. It's set up as a cohorted schedule. So because we have them in smaller groups rotating through the day, they are actually going with that group through that day, which means they're kind of shifting with that. So the teacher's schedule is actually different every day.
Why though? Why can't we put it back? Why can't we have a regular classroom day just virtual?
Well, the way it's set up right now, that actually wouldn't work that way, but that's how it's set up at this moment.
That's why I'm asking why. Why wouldn't it set up that? Why wouldn't it work that way a lot of parents want to know why it wouldn't work that way. That teacher's got to be there. Those kids, if this coronavirus wasn't going on, those kids would be in the school taking their classes throughout an 8-hour period. So I guess I don't understand why it wouldn't work that way if you just left everything alone and just did half days rather than 2 hours one day and 2 hours the next and a full day at school. You're opening the door up to a lot more possibilities by doing virtual and going and having these kids, again, doing these classes. The teachers are interacting. You're looking at the health and the well-being of the kids throughout the day. The teachers are. You're holding them accountable. You're giving them a structure throughout the day. Right now, there's no structure on any level for these kids. It's chaos. And where it needs to start is with the school. It would be great if the school would, like I said, I'll give you an opportunity to explain why it won't work.
Well, first of all, I would disagree with you that teachers are not available. They're emailing students. They're telling them if they need a personal Zoom to have question answered, they will do it. They're offering students
I
to
guess
be
that's
able to
besides
come
the
in
fact right
and
now.
make
The
up
question
work.
why I'm asking that you guys are saying it won't work. That's not the topic at hand right now. The topic at hand is why this won't work. I would like to know why this won't work, because there's no reason it wouldn't work.
Right.
So
right
my
now-
understanding is that the reason it won't work in our current path is because we have grouped kids together, so when they are physically in school, there's no cross-contamination. Small groups stay together. So if we did move to a model where we replicated the school day, like you're saying, and really had kids follow their schedule, but do it virtually, that we would either have to get very comfortable with complete cross-contamination, because kids would not be moving in those small cohort groups, or we would have to go 100% virtual. That it kind of feels like those are, it would be one or the other if we went down that path.
Has the discussion ever been asked between the parents of going 100% virtual? Because to me, I would think my kids would be more beneficial at this point going 100% virtual than the schedule that is in place right now.
What were the results of the survey as far as how many people wanted to go 100% virtual? 8%?
Yeah,
Not many. It was very little.
It was very small.
8%, you're saying?
Travis, we'll talk about this more on the phase 2 after we get through the citizens communications.
Sure. Sure.
To stay
Just
on
hang
track.
out then?
Say that again?
Just hang out?
Yep.
No, not a problem. That's why I asked. I might have overstepped and jumped the gun on it.
Good questions. It sparks conversation. So we'll move on if there's any other citizen communications at this time.
Okay, I appreciate it. I'll hang out.
Nobody? Okay, now we will go on to items for information discussion. The ad hoc committee update, please.
Hello, Mr. Wainwright. Can you pull up my slides, please? Thank you. You can move to slide 2. Great. So we met last Thursday as an ad hoc committee and created a very thoughtful, robust scorecard or report card for Mineral Point Unified School District based on epidemiology and data being informed by the Iowa County Public Health Department. So many of you are very familiar with this dashboard that our Public Health Department puts out. And I just want to show you the data that informs our report card. So you can see I've circled in yellow various data points. So each of these corresponds with a metric on our report card. So you can go to the next slide. And here is some epidemiology 101. So let's welcome to my class. We are going to start with a score of 5. And if you have a score in the red, we are going to subtract a point. If you have a score in the yellow, we're going to just leave the score. And if you score in the green, we're going to add a point. And this is a way for us to measure on a scale of then 0 to 10 how we are doing in our community and in our schools. So our thresholds are virtual would be a score of 0 to 2, the current hybrid, a score of 3 to 6, phase 2, which will be discussed tonight, a score of 7 to 8, and then our goal, 100% in person, is a score of 9 to 10. This scoring card is representative of the CDC guidelines, and then the data will be used or pulled from our local Iowa County data. So I will move on to the next slide. So additional considerations. Obviously, there's not just a score. We can give a number, but there's also more to take into account. So we should look at the positive cases in our schools. So are they impacting students? Are they impacting staff? Are they impacting the ability to carry out instruction in our schools? As well as capacity, so staffing and resources. And again, what we are recommending is a recommendation. It is not a final decision, and we do defer to our local public health department and school administration for safety. Next slide. So we ran the numbers and we looked at some of our retrospective data back to August and color-coded it so you can kind of see where we're at. Again, yellow is kind of in the middle, green is good, red is not good, and tallied the scores. And so you can see where we've been trending. Unfortunately, we've been trending towards the red. And I will get to our data that was updated today. I was not able to have that on this slide in time. So this is data that we reviewed with the ad hoc committee last Thursday. Unfortunately, a lot has transpired since Thursday, which I will get into. But as of last Monday, a week ago, we were at a score of 3, solidly putting us into our current hybrid model. You can move to the next slide. Okay, so some considerations. We all want to get back to more face-to-face. So in order to do that in a safe way, we recommend that you need a score in the higher level for 2 weeks before a pivot at quarter. So you would need to be in, the new color or the new level for 2 weeks in a row before considering a pivot. And again, we recommend at the quarter because that is what we've heard from staff and administration, that a change at that time point would be best for students. We also recommend, we will get to this point, so we will. It's hard to think about right now, but when we get to the point of no new cases in 14 days, then we could resume with less stringent guidelines. And again, just to summarize what our current recommendations are, so the 5 key mitigation strategies, this is based in CDC recommendations, so consistent and correct use of masks, social distancing to the largest extent possible, hand hygiene, respiratory etiquette, cleaning and disinfection, and contact tracing in collaboration with the local health department. So again, that's what we should be doing at minimum. At the point when we have no new cases in 14 days, then we can talk about following less stringent guidelines. And then the next slide. So, some of you might be thinking, gosh, this is some heavy mental gymnastics and math. Parents and community, they're not going to understand this. The good news is we don't recommend posting the math and how we're calculating it. What we could have is the parent facing is just a color or a score on a weekly basis. So you would show a green, a yellow, a red. We can also, similar to our Iowa County Public Health Department, they have an archived scorecard so you can see what it has looked like in the past. And then Jane could include in weekly health updates to parents. And next slide. So this was our current recommendation as of last Thursday. So you can read what we wrote, which was basically we were at a score of 3. And that would fall in line with maintaining our hybrid model. And that was supported last October 4th by our amazing public health officer in Iowa County. As of today, I ran the numbers, and our current score is at a 2. We have had, as many of you have seen in our emails, 4 cases in the last 4 days in our school district. 2 puts us solidly into pivoting to fully virtual. Our county public health officer also supports that recommendation of a pivot to fully virtual based on our public health data. And not only that, in our schools, we are actively having an outbreak in our schools. So in Mineral Point, we are at 61 active cases. 6 of the 11 outbreaks are also in Mineral Point. So we really are at the edge or the beginning of a major surge, and we need to be really thoughtful and mindful and pay attention to what this data is suggesting. I'm happy to take any questions.
Annika, I have a question regarding the ranges within the scorecard. Is there a reason, looking at the values for the different segments, is there a reason why the hybrid model has the largest range?
Yeah, so that was what we currently had selected based on our retrospective data. So knowing that we would likely pivot to hopefully phase 2 eventually, that was our goal.
Okay. And in the event that we don't have a well-defined phase 2, and hopefully we move that resolve sooner rather than later, do 7 and 8 split where 7 goes with the current and 8 goes with 100% hybrid, or do 7, 8, and 8 both go to the current hybrid? What would that look like?
So phase 2 is the plan that we had been presented by the administration, so by the various schools. So we would keep 7 and 8 with phase 2 in hopes that once we get to phase 2, we would hopefully stay there. But again, we can't predict what the pandemic will do in our community. I will also say that our public health officer is very supportive of this model. This is based in epidemiology. So the science is very solid with this report card.
Monica, question.
Yeah.
Aaron, done. On your scoring card guide, can you talk a little bit about how you teased out the ranges of those metrics to give you red, yellow, green? I mean, were those taken straight from the zones on the dashboard?
They were taken from the CDC. Yeah, so both from the CDC and then the Iowa County Health Department. So Iowa County Health Department is using the Minnesota model, and we utilize the CDC guidelines that are a more recent update. And so it is a little bit of both. So we try to incorporate both recommendations into one model.
And you said that Debbie and the health department reviewed this report card and supported it?
Yes, at least that's what Jane has shared with me.
Okay. Thank you.
So we were at a 3 last Thursday. Now we were at a 2.
Yeah.
So if we were at a 2 last Thursday, your recommendation would be to go 100% virtual.
Yes. So
Okay.
knowing,
Tonight then, Annika, or is that the committee's recommendation?
yeah, so if we follow what the committee recommended with this scoring card, following this, this evaluation, as of this week, the data would be a 2. So in order to pivot to more in person, we would say we want a 2-week trend towards good. When you pivot towards, less in person, more serious situation or an active outbreak, our recommendation is to defer to the public health department, and Mr. Wainwright will speak to this as well. But our Iowa County school guidance dashboard, so from our local public health department, recommends minimal instruction, face-to-face instruction. They recommend a pivot to fully virtual for 2 weeks at this time, due to not only the outbreak that's occurring in our schools, but also in our community of Mineral Point.
And since Mineral Point was one of the first to go with the hybrid plan in our local area, we were told time and time again that if and when cases would increase, we would be able to stay in school longer, which I guess we did for a few days. Is a few days good enough then? You think that the plan was a success, Annika?
Yeah, I do. I think it's actually been a number of weeks in comparison to some neighboring school districts. But again, it's apples and oranges. You can't compare our success to others because it's a different footprint, a different foundation, a different square footage of each building, the ability to social distance the cohort. The virus does not care about those logistics. But I think it is, it's success that we were able to maintain face-to-face instruction as long as we have. And unfortunately, due to the active situation in our school since Thursday and the number of increasing cases, I don't think we have, without jeopardizing the health of staff and students, I don't think we have an option other than pivoting to fully virtual.
Well, I'll say this, Annika, I agree with you. I thought yesterday when I heard about this that we should have went fully virtual starting today.
Yeah.
14. I'm a little puzzled as to why we were in school today, putting faculty or students at risk. So yeah, I thought we should have been shut down for 14 days. Everybody get healthy. We go back to the hybrid model and we give it a try again. That's my 2 cents.
So when we shut down, will our staff still come into work, or is it going to be 100% shutdown lockdown? Does anybody know?
So my personal recommendation from an epidemiology standpoint is that staff should not be in the building. That would be my recommendation as a private citizen.
That is also the recommendation of Debbie Siegenthaler at the Iowa County Health Department.
Okay.
But there would be virtual.
But our expectation, I'm sorry.
Yes, the answer is
Our
yes.
expectation is that our teachers would continue to teach. Is that correct
That's
from a
correct.
remote location? Okay.
I guess I should also throw out that, finding suitable substitute teachers or any teacher for that matter is obviously an issue. We're not going to deny that. So going virtual would allow any staff member that might be quarantined to do their job from home. It would save us money.
That would be accurate.
Right, I mean, I know, you mentioned neighboring schools, yeah, there's other ones that have been going to school, they were shut down, they've been going back. I don't know how it went today, that's really none of my concern. But we just shut down, we give it 2 weeks, everybody get healthy, we give it another shot and see what happens.
We come back as a hybrid plan or 100% in person then at the quarter?
Well, we haven't voted on nothing yet.
But I'm just,
You're
right.
As of right now, I would say hybrid plan, because that's what we're in at the moment.
Mm-hmm.
Let's not get the cart before the horse.
Yeah. I see Travis is with us. Travis?
Go ahead.
You brought up a good point earlier. Annika, how much time have you spent on the virtual learning portion of this hybrid plan? I believe that was a directive from the board to this committee.
Right, so we did create the survey asking for feedback from parents and staff as well. So that feedback was presented or is in the 98 and 26 pages of the survey results.
I've heard multiple concerns about our hybrid learning also not being rigorous enough. If anything needs to be changed, especially now if we do 100% virtual, is this the opportunity to experiment with more Zoom time?
I would think going 100% virtual would definitely alleviate a lot of stress off of the teachers where they're not teaching 2 or 3 different cohorts or groups a day. I mean, am I correct in assuming that?
I think we created a lot of extra
very
work.
accurate.
Okay.
Because you have a Zoom meeting and then I have face-to-face, and then I have
Right.
some people that might be live streaming into the classroom at that time and then preparing for a different group through Zoom. So yes, if you reduce the number of things that staff members are preparing for, it would certainly appear to be much easier for them in the long run. And they could focus then completely on the virtual delivery model.
Well, again, that goes back to what I pointed out before, that, you know, I'm not saying parents are bad or there's certain parents are bad or whatever. I'm just saying that there's other eyes on the kids too. That way, you know, that, you know, you physically see these children 5 days a week instead of 1 day a week. And you're giving them structure back into their daily routine. Right now, you gave them keys to a race car, and these kids are driving around the track backwards. I'm not a genius by any means. I ain't saying I got all the answers. I'm just telling you what I see is going on in my household, and speaking to other parents over different counties, not just Iowa County. This is, you know, this is nationwide. And this is the future that we are honing right now. And to me, we're not looking at the education of these children. We're more concerned about the health and the well-being, but yet making it look good for who's ever watching. I'm sorry, but my number one priority is we went 100% virtual would eliminate the whole academic, you know, bringing in a disease or whatever from somewhere else or somebody giving it to somebody. There's no question in it. You're eliminating it. So now you're focusing on the education of these children instead of worrying about whether or not this child is sick and should go home for the day. Did he contaminate another 25 kids? You know, the focus is in the wrong area. Eliminate the issue at hand and put more focus on the education. And that goes back to, I heard you guys speaking about homecoming and homecoming dance and WIAA sports. I'm a farm boy. I played all that stuff. I did all that stuff when I was a kid. I agree with it 100%. But at the end of the day, you know, we're downsizing these classes so we're not contaminating as much, but yet you're going to send a kid out onto a football field snotting, spitting, and sweating all over the other kids, and then bring them back into the school for 1 day. That's not a concern, but having a normal classroom size is a concern. I guess to me the priorities are a little off, and if parents and the kids want to do the sports, that's fine. That's totally up to them. But let's just do 100% virtual. That way the school isn't reliable for a kid getting contaminated by another kid. It's just the question's obsolete. And then again, you're opening up these teachers so they can actually teach the kids. That's all. That's my biggest concern right now. is getting structure and be able to have my kids learn in the timely manner that they deserve to be able to do this. You know, it wasn't their fault that this coronavirus hit. It wasn't your fault. But let's, you know, education's more important than sports right now to me. And that's what we need to focus on.
Thank you.
I just want to say that
Go ahead.
Travis is making some awesome points, and I think that I'm just trying to think of in terms of the agenda. I don't because Larry, you're making some good questions about is virtual working or not, and what's 100% virtual going to mean. I think eventually we need to make a decision, you know, so that would be an action, right, under action items,
Yeah,
right?
that's correct.
So, and I think we need to talk about every single one of Travis's concerns in the context of let's make a final decision on where we want the district to go educationally based on the report card. So I don't know, Nate, as president, I don't know if we want to move
Phase 2 elementary school all the way to action item, essentially.
Or if we want to move the phase 2 plan action
Now.
right after we hear about the phase 2 plans.
Well, I guess.
Or, you know, I don't know.
I know what you're saying, that we were talking about.
Either we do it now or we do it later, but
I
since
mean,
we've
I
already
feel
got a
like
pretty good discussion
I feel like
going.
it's all flowing together and when
Mitch, can we do that since we are having this joint discussion? Can we move that action item up?
Yes.
Into, okay.
That's okay, Mitch?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I guess, yeah, since we are talking about this, we might as well, well, should we hear, let's hear the phase 2 plan.
From the administrators.
Yes.
So let's just make sure that none of the other board members have questions for Annika and the committee about this report card and where it came from and what it means.
I have just one question that maybe you can answer, Doug, or I can answer. Why are we seeing such a spike in cases? Is there a certain reason in Wisconsin in general, and how long is it expected to last?
That's a great question. Annika, I mean, she's the epidemiologist. I would just say, in my observations, I think, you know, we've had a summer where people have maybe tried to do their best. We've had a mask mandate for part of the summer. I think we've had quite a bit of travel within the state with or without appropriate socially distancing and guidelines. We had a lot of weddings postponed from June to July to September that ended up going through. And we had school start. We had elementary schools, high schools start, we had colleges start. And I think everyone in the last, 4 to 6 weeks has done more commingling than they had in the last 3 months, including kids. And there's been a lot more back and forth to places and weddings and home. And I think that's my best explanation. And then as far as how long it's going to last, I mean, it really is going to depend on how much we contract our actions, to control the spread. It's really the whole point of contact tracing, quarantining, isolation is the spread of a pandemic is like a forest fire, right? It's like a chain of matches. And if you can break that chain before it catches the next match on fire, then you have a chance. And that's the whole point of trying to be able to test a lot, find who's positive, keep them home, and allow everyone else to be safely in the public or safely in school. And the more people that are sick and the more people that don't follow guidelines and the more people, it makes it harder to trace. If you were at a wedding, 200 people, good luck trying to figure out, where those people are connected, so it just gets harder and harder to put the fires out. And now you've got 10, 12 fires, and now every county's having increased cases. So it's been quite a snowball.
Throughout the state in general.
Throughout the state.
The hospitalizations on the increase then with this uptick?
They are. I mean, I think the hottest spot is in the Northeast, in the Green Bay, Fond du Lac area. And I think it's just kind of spreading this way. We have a few cases at Upland Hills right now, but we're not getting overwhelmed. We've had a few outbreaks at the nursing homes that haven't been as bad as expected, but there have been some positive cases. So we're starting to see early signs of a surge, that we thought was going to happen in March and April, which is why there was this big, stay-at-home order, and now we're starting to see it. So I'm legitimately concerned. We haven't had the deaths that, fortunately, that sometimes come with increased cases, but usually the deaths, the spike in deaths usually lags a few weeks after you have a spike in cases.
We all watch the news and we talk about vaccines and is there, from your perspective, do you think that's going to help us this school year, 2021 school year?
Probably not. Probably not.
Your professional opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably see a vaccine of some sort by the new year. And I don't know in how many millions of doses, and I don't know who's going to get access to that. It's probably going to be nursing homes and vulnerable people and maybe frontline workers. I don't know how well that's going to affect, how much is available and how much we can get people vaccinated. So, I'm hopeful that come spring and summer, the cases are going to be down and we're going to,
Everybody make sure they're muted, please.
a lot of them knows.
Yeah, and
I'm no Fauci, but
It kind of,
it's looking like in this area we're trending in the wrong direction. And
Some of the information I'm getting from Iowa County Health, there are some cases at Upland Hills. The hospital beds in Madison are, I think, starting to fill up, and as they say at Upland Hills, the most serious cases they would send to Madison, and Madison is starting to run out of places for hospitals. So that, I think, factors into some of the concern in Iowa County as well. When you start looking at that dashboard score, can hospitals handle it? There are so many ICU beds in Upland Hills, and for the worst cases, they would send them to Madison, and Madison is starting to run out of some of those. And I think the other thing that both doctors could probably speak to, when a vaccine comes out, it isn't going to come to us. It might come to the doctors, but it isn't going to come to the average citizens until much later. It'll be the nursing homes. From everything I've heard too, nursing homes, EMTs, doctors, nurses, and then slowly work its way down to, the average citizen, and children would be somewhere last on that chain of vaccines.
as it should be.
But I think to your point, Larry, the main reason we're so concerned is not necessarily kids dying, although, that does happen, but the chances of these kids dying from COVID is super low.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the kids bringing it home to grandma and grandma dying. And so if the more grandmas we can get protected with a vaccine, hopefully it's effective enough that we can feel confident in it, the less worried we can be about a kid bringing it home, so, and then it's not as important that, at least the healthier kids get vaccinated. They're probably going to be last, to be vaccinated, but it's going to be less of a concern if the more vulnerable population that's more likely to die is less likely to get it. So it'll be interesting to see once we get the first wave of vaccines, what the recommendations will be as far as the rest of the public.
But can I interject a thought quickly? We're coming up on 7:30, and based on this conversation, it sure sounds like we need to let families know that there may not be school tomorrow, so they can start making arrangements. If we are going to be taking that direction, could we fast track that particular item and get a communication out to the district immediately? Because as a mom, I'm thinking, okay, got to make sure my bases are covered. And I'm not the only one in that boat.
Yeah. Great call, Joni. Thanks, Joni.
So is there any more questions
I do
for?
have a question for Annika.
Okay.
Annika, do you happen to know, do you have the data, if you guys had used the county scorecard numbers instead of the CDC, what our score would be?
So we would still be in the red. So minimal capacity virtual learning.
Okay.
Any more questions for the committee? If not, we could talk to the administrators if we could about the phase 2 plan.
Thank you, Annika and Justin.
Thank you.
Mr. Renwick, are you online?
Before we
Yeah.
do that, Nate, don't we need to do what Joni suggested? Maybe somehow resolve this thing for the parents so they know early that there's no school tomorrow?
This kind of pertains to it, kind of, Doc. I mean, I guess unless we skipped over phase 2, if we're seriously considering.
I don't mind talking about phase 2, but we haven't got past this phase. And I think we need to resolve the thing about no school and going virtual for 2 weeks.
Well,
You can jump into an action item.
I guess we can jump into an action item, skip phase 2.
Well, I think
Essentially.
my question is whether the board would like to hear what phase 2 looks like, pros and cons, before we make a vote whether to go stay here, virtual, or phase 2.
Yeah,
I don't know if the board
we're kind of in the middle of
wants to
here.
hear what a phase 2 would look like before we make a decision. I want to be sensitive to that.
Well, as far as, I just think as of right now, the school needs to get healthy. That's the only reason I
I
say
hear
we
you.
just close down. We could discuss phase 2. You know, there's nothing wrong discussing it,
I
but
hear you.
when we open back up, we're gonna open in the hybrid and then we'll consider a phase 2. And
Does any board member want to hear the phase 2 presentation before we vote on the report card recommendation?
I'm comfortable voting on the report card recommendation and then hearing phase 2. I am very interested in hearing phase 2 and having a plan laid out, but I am more concerned about getting a timely communication out to parents so they can start making arrangements for tomorrow.
Can I also just add, with a fully virtual pivot, I would like the board to consider the impacts then on the athletics as well, that be considered in the discussion.
Absolutely.
I think if you're going to take a recommendation from me, I think you make the decision on whether or not you pivot to virtual, then come back and you can listen to phase 2, and then if you accept that, it's like, okay, when we're ready to move to phase 2, we already know what that will be, and we can get that out in front of
That makes
families
sense.
after the fact.
And I guess we do need to discuss, in my mind, if we need to be 100% virtual, that hits a pause button on all extracurricular activities. But I would like to hear if the rest of the board feels differently, and then I'd want to understand why they feel differently.
I guess I got one comment on that, is just that, again, that goes back to, that should be up to the parents and the children in the activities.
Yeah, thank you, Travis. Yeah, we're gonna jump right into, we don't really have that action item on here.
It was part of the phase 2 discussion, but to discuss.
Okay, so if somebody
this
would
option.
want to make a motion, one way or another, to go, I guess, to whether go all online virtual or.
Could I make a motion to accept the scorecard as presented by the ad hoc committee?
Are you
I'll second it.
accepting what they presented,
Or the
or
recommendation.
just the recommendation?
I'm accepting the scorecard as it was presented.
Joni, are you moving that we accept it as a recommendation, a recommended guidance to the board, or that we follow it to the letter?
I'm recommending that we follow it to the letter.
I have some serious concerns about that then.
Okay, then I'd be glad to hear them.
That leaves us only, oh, sorry.
Doc, did you seconded Joni, correct? Doc Lindsay?
I did. I seconded.
Okay.
That leaves us.
And I can't hear you, so speak up a little better there, would you?
If we accept it as presented as our decision maker, that only allows us to pivot at quarters, which means we can only make a decision 2 weeks before the second quarter begins. We're basically locked into
Whatever the
virtual for whatever the second quarter starts as. So if we're locking that in as our rule of law, I think that needs to be dismissed. 'Cause
Okay,
I'm not willing to.
so I would be willing to make an amendment to say that I am accepting the numerical values presented in the scorecard and the guidelines that we need 2 weeks of improved values before pivoting. rather than the part about only switching at quarter. I think then we can have discussion as we get to those points when the appropriate time for the pivot is.
I think the quarter would be a good idea to switch it at that time. That way it gives it a decent amount of time to show that.
I gotta cut you off, buddy. I'm sorry. This is for the board to discuss right now after the motion. Sorry, man. After a motion and second, it's just for the board. Sorry.
And I would throw, I think the quarter came in because of kind of where the timing is right now, where this board meeting lies. It's 2 weeks to the 9 weeks, so I think.
Timing deal. I
So I think some of that is folded into that recommendation. So, I would defer to the rest of the committee to weigh in on if every decision had to be at a quarter or go back to the 2 weeks of positive numbers to allow us.
I just hesitate to make it our rule of law because that takes out the
what are we
seven
here
of
for?
us having any thoughts.
Yep.
I mean, if Avoca has 25 cases, we're gonna be in the red. And that's a long way from Mineral Point School District. And if that puts us into a 2, we saw a situation where a neighboring school shut down because they adopted the numbers as is, and they didn't have a lot of cases initially.
So, and I'm kind of with you. The reason I wanted to.
I don't want to remove the human involvement. I love numbers. I'm a numbers guy. I mean, I eat this epidemiology up. But, I mean, there's factors involved. If there's a nursing home in Dodgeville that has an outbreak, that shouldn't affect our kids getting face-to-face time. So I'm a little hesitant to make this I love it as a guideline. I think it's a great tool, but I think that's what it is for us as a tool.
As soon as I heard the numbers, yesterday, I said, we just got to shut down. I didn't see any of the advisory committee's numbers or nothing. Just common sense. Hey, everybody's got to get healthy. Just shut down, get everybody cleaned up, and we'll try to get.
Could we do it by, I'm sorry, I walked in here.
Oh, that's
It's
fine.
easier than being on the
I thought you
computer.
were on the computer.
I was. I figured it's easier to walk down this way. Could we do it by building level, or is that not an option? I'm just asking, because if most cases, let's say most cases are up in the high school, there's no reason that the elementary would have to shut down, or vice versa. Because I know that's obviously one of the biggest fears is to go 100% virtual, because then we don't get the in-person touch.
I honestly don't know where the cases are at.
And I'm just asking.
I
That would
think-
be
I
something,
don't know
because
we
if
have to
it's
go
not
close,
here,
but I'm
then
gonna need more information before I make it. I only know of one case.
Okay.
I got an email on one case.
Well, in Annika's presentation, she said that we should have 3 considerations. One is the report card. Where are we scoring in terms of the county metrics? 2, positive cases in the school. And 3, capacity, staffing and resources. So, Joni, I guess what I'm saying is kind of to Andy's point that I think when the board makes a decision to pivot one way or the other, we should consider all 3 of those things. What's the report card say? Are we having positive cases in the school, and what's our staffing situation? Meaning, do we have 5, 6 staff and we don't have any subs? Even if we're in the hybrid model and we're in the yellow with our report card, we probably still need to shut a building down. If we don't have enough, if we can't staff our kids. So.
That makes sense to me.
I guess what I'm saying, Joni, is when I asked you by the letter, are we giving the administration full authority to pivot to virtual, hybrid, or et cetera, based solely on the report card? And I agree. I'm not sure. I mean, I think that's what Dodgeville voted. They voted on a metric-based decision model tool, and basically told the superintendent, you just follow this. And if the numbers say close, you close. And that's what they did.
And I think now they're maybe doing a little backtracking on that, but that you are correct, that was their model. What was based on the countywide numbers. So that could have been Mineral Point, it could have been Barneville, it could have been Linden, Highland.
So I like the report card saying, hey, things around us don't look good, and we need to take that into consideration, if we make a decision either way. And, let Mr. Wainwright assess the positive cases and the staffing issues in the district and say, hey, I think we need to go 100% virtual in all buildings or in this building or whatever, and then we can approve that. So I don't
Okay,
know.
so I withdraw my proposal, my motion.
Okay.
So what is
I
the
think-
opinion of the, Mitch, what is your opinion as far as going virtual?
Between the time I left school and coming back before the board meeting tonight, I was copied on an email that the Iowa County Health Department recommends that we go K-12 virtual due to the number of cases. We've had 4 positive cases in the last 4 days. And we're still waiting on some test results from a few other cases that we know. So we have some people sitting at home waiting to get a test result to know, is the impact larger or not as large as it is now. But due to some of those metrics and 4 positive cases, and right now, I would ask Jane, if she's still on, to correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think all 4 of those are actually related to one another. I think the contacts have come somewhere else and made their way into the building. So we're dealing with what they deem as an outbreak. It was shared with me that Iowa County has 11 current outbreaks right now. So that's cases in a business that has maybe 50 or more, 2 or more cases and 50 or more employees. Of the 11 outbreaks currently going on in Iowa County, 6 of those are in Mineral Point. So we're kind of the hotbed right now, the hot zone right now for outbreaks. You can track on one of the, there's a website that tracks the county level cases, but then it also breaks it down. You can zoom into by zip code. And the 53565 zip code has the largest number of cases, positive current cases in Iowa County. So for one reason or another, we seem to be, it's between Dodgeville, their zip code, and Mineral Point zip code, it's kind of bouncing back and forth who's in first and who's right behind them. So I just got that information before coming back to tonight's meeting. So we were looking at potentially just having the elementary pivot to 100% virtual, but again, Iowa County's recommendation is that we do it K-12 to allow that 2-week window for the virus to run its course, and hopefully that gets us healthy where we can come back again.
So Dr. Dunn, do you think the school, with the amount of interaction with kids and employees, if we were to go 100% virtual, that would help the community of Mineral Point? Is there enough bodies in this building at one time? Not that we're only doing it for our school and the kids, but doing it for the community.
That's a good point.
I have to feel that way. I mean, I think when you include in school and extracurriculars, I think it does help control the rapid spread in our community. I think it does.
You said an outbreak is two or more cases, Mitch?
Yes, in a facility that, or a residence. So if you look at the atrium or whatever the name is now, if there's an outbreak, if there's a positive case there, that counts towards that 11. Or if there's 2 or more cases in a company, Cummins, has over 50 employees. So if there was 2 positives within Cummins,
That would be an outbreak.
that's another outbreak. That isn't 2 outbreaks, that's 1 outbreak. So we have 11 of those in the county, and 6 of them are in the Mineral Point census tract in the zip code area, according to Debbie. So for some reason, we're it right now.
I just want to follow up on Joni's motion that she withdrew. I mean, I would move that we accept this report card as our metrics-based decision-making tool for the board to determine which way we pivot.
For the rest of the school year, you're talking about?
Yes.
Not just for this possible shutdown.
Yes,
In terms of just guidance?
it's guidance as a tool, our decision-making tool. It's a tool we're going to use to make a decision.
We've already done that through the creation of that committee. So really, I think we got that base covered.
Okay, so they're recommending their report card with all these numbers. We should basically acknowledge whether we are going to use it or not.
I don't agree. I don't disagree with you.
That's my motion.
Yeah.
That we should use it as we should accept it as is, as a tool that we would use to make a decision as a board.
I guess what I'm asking is, if Mitch, Matt, Vicky, and Matt say we need to shut down for 2 weeks, that's our recommendation, then that's what the board should act on, with the help of Annika and Justin's committee.
I don't disagree. And I think there could be a situation where even though the report card doesn't suggest we go to virtual, we do go virtual.
Absolutely.
So I think that's your point, right?
Yeah.
So you're just
As we're talking
suggesting
about.
we acknowledge we're going to use this as our.
Yes.
But not the not to decide all. It's
Right.
just going to be a
Yes,
tool.
it's
Right.
just a guide.
But we do have a motion.
The report card will not have absolute decision-making. authority.
Okay, so that's clear. That's what Andy's.
Yeah.
But we're accepting it and we're going to use it for decisions tonight and for future decisions.
And I believe that is also their recommendation. So that, to come back to your point, if we had 3 positive cases right out of the gate, that this report card won't slow it down, because it might be a week or 2 week lag to get those numbers there. And if we're seeing that, that's why they're looking at it saying, we would want to defer the administration to look what's happening in the buildings or in the district to make that decision, and we may have to go quicker than what the report card would suggest.
That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
Right.
Did you second that, Gary?
I will second that, yes.
To use that as a tool.
As a tool, yes. With, obviously, with the administration having authority, if they see cases spike up before a report card come from the ad hoc committee.
Okay, so we've got the motion and second on that to use that as a tool. Okay, any more questions or comments on that particular? Andrew, call the question on that one, please.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefan,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. Now, we need to,
Decide on virtual.
yes, something. Does anybody
I'll
want to make a motion
I'll
on
make
this?
the motion that we close down for 14 days and go 100% virtual. I might throw a wrench in this and say I would like to see teachers in the building, because I feel there's no reason they can't be in their classrooms where there's no other way around them. They should be safe. Now, if somebody can prove me wrong, I will be happy to listen, but that is my motion.
Okay,
Sure.
you're motioning
Yeah.
to go
Close
down
down
virtual.
for 14 days and have teachers teach in their classrooms, where they're the only one in their classroom.
I would like to speak to this. I asked this question to the health department tonight, specifically if teachers should be included in the quarantine, because I thought it may come up. And I was told teachers should also be at home as well.
Okay.
They're not immune from catching, spreading, having it now and not knowing it. Their recommendation was to include the staff.
So your recommendation then is just lock the doors on the school, then is that sound about close to accurate?
I think it would be fair to be able to complete their job, to make arrangements for certain people at certain times spread out, to be able to go in and get what they need so that they can fulfill their educational duties. But we would have to make a good plan for that with the teachers tonight.
I get where you're going, Gary, and I'm trying to think this through. And the best way I can think of why it's important for them not to be in the building is to make sure that, number one, that staff don't spread it to each other while they're here. So like if they're sharing a bathroom or any kind of common spaces in the building, they can come in asymptomatic and have gotten it from the spouse or whatever and bring it in, and we could co-infect staff, which might prolong our quarantine. Second thing is, we want to make sure the buildings are 100% disinfected and clean when we return. And if there's a chance that we've got a staff here in a classroom that doesn't know they're infected and say, you know, 2 or 3 days later, we open up and they end up being positive and the classroom is contaminated. Yeah, there's just a slight risk there.
And
And so,
if the county's recommend it, then I'll withdraw that part from my motion.
okay,
I have no problem doing that.
okay.
It is tough for teachers to teach at home with not as good a Wi-Fi
Uh,
and smart board and all that stuff. So I understand where you guys are.
The motion is for 14 days, but we know that we have at least a couple pending test results. Do we need to add a little bit of cushion on the end of that for any cases that are currently incubating?
Yeah, with that, I will completely withdraw my motion. If you want to change the motion, you go right ahead.
I would ask Jane, maybe you could weigh in on some of that question.
Ongoing thing, I mean, it never.
I do not think that's a bad idea. Since we're going to a Tuesday, do we want to just do the next 3 weeks? Or do we skip over to the third, instead of going back on Tuesday, the 27th, we could move to Thursday, the 29th, or just, finish out that week and then start fresh on November 2nd, excuse me.
Angie,
go ahead.
I'm looking for just a little clarification or some discussion from you guys. So in looking at some of our neighboring districts around that have gone 100% virtual, they've had a caveat in theirs for students with the most significant disabilities who are not able to learn virtually, that they can bring those students in for in-person instruction. So in our district, we're maybe talking about 2 to 3 students, but that they're not able to learn over the computer, that they have to have direct instruction. So I guess I would like just to hear a little discussion if I have some parameters that even through this quarantine, I could maybe bring one student in with one teacher so that they could continue to get their services and make progress towards their academic goals.
I've also heard that some of the districts are doing that for students with broadband issues. That they're bringing in the minimal contact includes IEPs.
I have heard that.
Access the internet.
We have issued 40 hotspots. So
what do you think?
I would like to believe at this time of the school year, anybody that needed a hotspot has it and is able to make that connection. But I would echo Angie Klein's comment. I know even the Dane County schools that are 100% virtual are allowing students that need to be served through their IEPs to come into schools. I think there are ways that we can certainly create safety with barriers, face masks, shield. I think we can create.
And I'm just gonna.
For those students.
Sorry, Mitch. I'm just gonna add that this isn't. I'm not referring to like all of our special education students. The vast majority of them can connect through Zoom and work with their teacher and receive their services and their interventions and their therapy through Zoom, but a very select small group of students with the most significant needs just are not able to attend through the computer. They need that in-person training. And I think we have a really good basis of who those students were based upon how services went in the spring. And so I'm looking at a very small percentage of students, not the majority of special ed students. And I would certainly work with Jane to make sure that how we work that schedule and location and disinfection and cleaning and all the things, safeguards that we need in place that we are using on a daily basis could be beefed up as well.
So how specific should we be in a motion? I mean, in terms of, should we just say, we recommend the district go 100% virtual, except for unique circumstances as determined by the administration, or would you like more specific guidance from that?
I think you could, if you're willing to leave it that way, then we can certainly work and get the students in that need to be in for the services that they require. You
Yeah, I think Dane County's, Mitch is right. It's Dane County's and they just said virtual unless the IEP teams have determined that virtual is not appropriate for the student or something. But I mean, I think it's up to you guys on how you want to word it, as long as you can give me the verbal okay that I could reach out to those couple of students and make individual arrangements with families.
You could make the motion to 100% virtual unless the IEP drives the need for in-person instruction.
Okay.
Can I just say one thing on that? With the whole virus and everything, I guess it'd be more safe for her to go to the child than the child to come to the school and be in contact with, the transportation and all the extra help for that child to get there. The virus does last. It has a life expectancy of 28 days. So I guess, and I just feel like you're putting a child at risk for bringing them into a situation like that when you already put the school under quarantine. That's all I got to say on it.
So if we put a timeline on this motion, I'm just trying to think of pivoting, when that date comes. Do we just, do we meet again, or do we just look at the report card, and see how the numbers are trending, and then make a call that week or within a couple of days? How do you see that working logistically, Mitch?
I would think we would look at our own data specific to our school district. And at the end of that time, are the numbers, as the data is showing us, we're ready to come back into that hybrid model, or do we need to extend that virtual because people have picked it up somewhere else, or the transmission continues to grow?
So then we do the 2 weeks and then add on?
I think you want to look at, kind of that 14-day is what a normal quarantine is. So I think you look at that. So the question would be, do you want to go to the 27th? Do you want to go, which is Tuesday? You go to 29th on Thursday, and that becomes the first day back. Gives a little leeway for a couple of the tests that are pending. But if we're getting information that things seem to be in the clear, then I would look at saying, okay, we're coming back on the 29th, if that's the day, or the 27th, if that's the day you decide.
To me, it's easier to add on than to all of a sudden, hey, things have been clear for 4 days. Let's go back. I mean, that's my personal thoughts. I mean, since we're already in it, we do our 14 and we say, hey, look, cases are well, and we extend this for the rest of the week. Or sure. That's my thoughts, but.
And Gene, you recommend going 16 days because of pending cases that might require a quarantine that starts?
That would yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting for a couple of results. That could potentially make more sense to move it out, at least to that Thursday for start. I mean, is anybody with a pending test, did any of them come to school today? No, oh no.
I didn't think so. Okay,
no.
So it really.
I think we'd be okay if we went back on the 27th. 27th would be the 14 days. If we moved it just for the sake of moving it to a 2-day, cohort group to the 29th, that wouldn't probably, it would help a little bit, and yet it would maybe make it easier of a transition. But I'm good with starting on the 27th. That's 14 days, and that's the recommendation.
Just a reminder, this is Joelle, that we have a special board meeting on the 26th to certify the levy. So.
Joelle. Okay. So
I would, if we make it the 27th, whatever we make it, it would probably be easiest for families to just stick to it. So as long as we are at the minimum, 14 days, we can reassess at that meeting. Like Joelle said, if things are looking terrible in the community, of course we could extend virtual, but I wouldn't go any shorter but the 27th would be the soonest. And I would be okay with that if that's where everyone's at.
Jane or Mitch, a quick question. This is Matt. We have a few staff members who are, their internet at home is not as strong if they're out in the country. And maybe this is a discussion for after a decision is made, but looking for a few exceptions if faculty can come in and teach from school if their connection's really poor and they're just not able to, host a Zoom conversation successfully. So.
Administration, obviously, special circumstances.
I think if we just make a motion to go 100% virtual and let,
Yes,
we're
administration.
not saying lock down the building, although that's kind of assumed, given these special circumstances, to make sure the 100% virtual is working for every student. Whether we need to get a teacher in here or a special ed student in here, I think we can make those exceptions without necessarily specifying.
We're down to giving parents 12 hours notice about not having school tomorrow. So let's make the best decision we can right now, knowing that it won't be perfect, so we can get this communicated.
Would anybody like to?
Oh, this is Joelle. I was going to say that I don't know if you want to talk about the athletics or the extracurricular portion with the same thing, but it'd be nice to include that in the communication as well.
Okay. You want to make a comment on that, Matt, or you were going to say something?
No, just so we're going K-12.
K-12.
I'm just wondering. I didn't know if we were going to separate it by building or not. That's fine. Again, this is you guys' call.
Yep, no, my motion is that the whole district go 100% virtual 14 days, and including cessation of extracurricular activities during that time. I think it only makes sense.
Would anybody like to make a second on this, on Dr. Dunn's motion?
I'll second it.
Okay, motion and a second. Open for discussion.
I have two questions. I'm only aware of one case. Is there a way you can explain what the other, I got an email on 4th grade yesterday. I'm not a parent, so I don't get the parent emails. Is there a way in open you can, are the other 3 in the elementary school?
There are pending in both buildings. There are positives in both buildings.
That was
You can say how
essentially
many
what I wanted
came.
to know. And then maybe I could get included on.
Well, we've had
whatever email goes
four
out.
positives in 4 days, and we have 2 pending. And a pending is in each building. So,
Be a positive and pending in both.
yes.
And what does virtual instruction look like? 100% virtual. We've talked about the safety. I'm curious what the education portion is going to look like.
Middle school, high school doesn't actually change in that sense. The schedule stays the same. Just your in-person day now becomes a fully virtual day.
So it's going to be synchronous for the day.
Yep, so right now our fully 100% virtual students are the same as they are as our in-person students right now. Because
So it's
that's all
going,
along the same
everybody's going to
schedule.
get the
What's that?
experience that the virtual students are getting now.
Yep,
We're
everything would just stay
expecting
the same. It would,
one or 2 synchronous days.
I can tell you, obviously, teachers would rather have the in-person day.
Right, with
But,
Zooms here. and
Yeah,
there.
everything, your in-person day would just become a fully virtual day. The rest of the week would stay the same for you. So if you were a freshman, you would have an in-person day, which would be fully virtual for the 7 hours, and then the rest of the week would stay the same.
So it just becomes synchronous.
Yep,
virtual.
ours is synchronous.
Okay. Mr. Renwick, what does your virtual look like?
And could you repeat that, Andy? I couldn't hear you.
I'm curious what your 100% virtual will look like.
Yeah, we would shift to, it would be similar to the 2 days that we already host with virtual, so that we would follow that schedule.
Would you have some synchronous days?
Synchronous, yep.
Okay.
Any more discussion on the motion?
So the extracurricular is only for the 2 weeks.
And that you're including practice, you're including everything, is that correct?
Excuse me,
You'll end 2 fall seasons because they're kind
before the 2 weeks is up.
Yes, volleyball, I believe their fall season would be next week, Tuesdays when that starts. Football obviously would have
cross
practice.
country is next week, yeah. Soccer
And
is
cross country.
It will increase. Just.
Yeah,
answer the question.
I don't like any of it. I
I'm
don't
just
like
answering
any
the
of it. It
question.
just doesn't make any sense
So when you say 2 weeks, that's true.
to do it.
You know, yeah, that's what we have. Just so that's out.
Isn't there a WIA guideline? If the fall season gets cut short and you only, is that just a football thing
You
or?
can go to spring, but not once you complete the full season.
If it wasn't 50%, Andy, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, if you don't complete 50% of a fall season, you can go to spring. Is that correct?
We've already passed that with volleyball, and the volleyball tournament starts October 20th. So they would be ineligible for the WIAA tournament series with going 2 weeks virtual
Okay.
and stopping athletics.
Thanks, Vicki.
The surrounding schools that have gone to virtual, Mitch or Matt, have they suspended extracurricular?
Yes.
Yes.
Most of them.
Yeah, I know to the north and south they did. They suspended their extracurriculars right now.
I believe Belmont only suspended, well, they were only out for a week, so they only suspended till that week. And then
That's why we ended up moving a game up. We were supposed to play the team to the south of us. That school district, that's who we were supposed to play last Friday. And because of that being out, we didn't play.
Darlington suspended football for the full 2 weeks, but they approved playing or running cross country and playing volleyball. But that was because of a positive case related to the football team.
Okay. Thank you. So I think I made a motion.
You made a motion, Joni seconded the motion. We're open for discussion still, does anybody else have any? Trust me, I know this is completely opposite of, but I really have a hard time with the ending of the sports, and I'm really torn on it.
That's not opposite.
I've basically vowed to never vote against the sports. And if for somehow, and trust me, I get it with the pandemic and the contact tracing. Is there any way we can somehow isolate those football players and the volleyball players and is there any way? I don't know. The cross country, the soccer. I mean, I'm just asking. I don't know if there is. Is there any way, like you said, that the other schools were able to do this?
I can tell you, if it's the NBA, what they did is they were in motels. They were tested about every day. They lived in what's called the bubble. The kids would have to live in the bubble. I don't know if any of the school districts can afford that. I understand this is a dismal thing for kids losing the athletics, but I don't see how it's possible to continue it. The only way would be to be in a bubble.
So let me be clear, Andy, with football, if we suspended football for 2 weeks, there still could be tournament for football. They could
Yes, they
participate.
could. And depending on the acclimation days, because Darlington is playing on Saturday because that's when their acclimation is.
Okay.
It could be, you miss this Friday, this next Friday, and then whatever the third week looks like, I don't know, it depends on acclimation. But then there would be week 7, and then potentially 8 and 9.
the ones that start next week are volleyball, cross country, and soccer for their fall tournaments.
I mean, I don't have no problem suspending any volleyball games up until the tournament. But it does seem a little less risky with volleyball than it does with football. I mean, if we're going to compare the two.
Absolutely.
As cross country and soccer.
If you come back on the 27th, you could have 3 days without pads, and be in pads in time for a game, potential game on the 30th of October or 31st, if you could get an agreement to move that game to a Saturday for football.
The only problem I have with that is it seems like we're playing favoritism to football and not the other sports. And it's just something I don't feel is right.
We're discussing suspending for 2 weeks. These would be the dates if we suspend it.
Football is potential, because their season, it goes a little bit longer.
The other ones end because it's in the tournament. They're not
That's
voting to end their season. They just can't play the tournament.
What I'm hearing right now is we're not going to go virtual, or we'll do virtual for 2 weeks, but we got to hurry up and open the doors back up so we can keep our sporting programs going. That's what I'm hearing right now, not our education. Seriously, that's what it comes down to.
I don't think anybody's made that statement. I mean, I don't think.
Well, that's what I'm listening to right now.
I don't think anybody's
It's
virtual learning.
All right, is there any more discussion on the motion by the board?
So just reiterate what the exact
Okay,
motion is, please.
yep, and the motion is, Dr. Dunn, do you want to repeat the motion, please?
Did you write it down, Angie?
I did. This is district-wide K-12, 100% virtual, 14 days, unless the IEP drives the need for the student to be here, including extracurricular.
I'm sorry, I hate to butt in, but can we clarify if that's early childhood through 12, not just K-12?
It was early childhood, does it not?
Early childhood through 12. That was,
Yeah.
Thank you.
you said K through 12, but yeah, early childhood through 12. Yes. Okay, any more discussion on the motion?
I would like to make an amendment to Dr. Dunn's motion to suspend football for 2 weeks, suspend regular season games for volleyball, soccer, cross country, but do allow volleyball, cross country, and soccer to participate in the tournament.
That is on Dr. Dunn for his, if he wants to accept that or not.
We could somebody could make a second to that, my motion, and then we could vote on that amendment to that motion.
You're getting, you're getting.
We have a motion. and
We have a motion and a second.
So yeah, so I think there. So unless Dr. Dunn, I think, is willing to
Yeah, that's,
amend his motion.
so we have a motion and a second on Dr. Dunn's.
If, just for point of order, I mean, so if this motion passes, and then can Larry move to amend that decision with his recommendation? Or
It seems as if
we've already voted
No,
to,
it seems as
I
if
don't think so.
we've already voted to do no
You would have to have
extracurriculars, right?
Right, yeah.
Could I ask for a clarification?
Yes, Angie.
Is this take effect tomorrow, or are we taking tomorrow as a day to prepare and distribute the materials that students are going to need while they're home virtually the next 2 weeks? Because like the students that were in school today were planning to be in school tomorrow. They don't have any material at home to begin learning tomorrow. Teachers don't have it at home with them. So I'm just wondering, like, what's the timeline for implementation?
Can we do that? Can we just?
And just as a point of reference, most other districts, at least that I followed, that I've seen on the news, have said teachers will prepare and then we start on the second day. So like if they announced on a Sunday, it was teachers will prepare on Monday, instruction starts on Tuesday. So
They took Monday and Tuesday, and then started their virtual on a Wednesday. So yes, a lot of school districts do allow that opportunity for teachers to get in, gather the stuff they need, get information out to families. Hey, you can come in and pick up stuff. We'll have it for you in the office, outside of school, whatever that would be.
Still start
So then
14 days.
Yeah, tomorrow would start with 14 days. with virtual would start.
I think we just have some teachers and families probably who are watching this board meeting panicking about how they're going to have material ready for the kids in less than 12 hours when we haven't gotten time to get it to them.
Go back on Tuesday. So Tuesday, it's still back on Tuesday.
Yes.
Okay. So would you recommend that I amend the motion to include tomorrow being a prep day?
Sure.
Okay.
To what?
Tomorrow would be a
Tomorrow
preparation
would
day,
be
transitioning to virtual.
a transition day for teachers and students.
This is Joelle. Does this then affect the end date at all?
No.
Okay, so, still, we have a motion and a second on the table. We've done that's minor modification, and then Larry has his amendment on the table.
No.
Or not on the table, but to Dr. Dunn.
Yeah.
Correct?
We have to vote on Dr. Dunn with the second from Joni first.
Okay.
Unless I amend the motion.
Unless he accepts the, yeah.
I get it, Larry, I just can't justify it. I hate voting on sports, I hate it, but I can't justify it. Got students at home.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any more discussion on the motion? No?
I hate to say it, I hate to say it, I'm still not clear. Does it go into effect tomorrow, or is tomorrow a prep day? That's the thing I just,
Tomorrow will be both, yes. Tomorrow will be a prep day.
but it goes into effect tomorrow.
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, okay. Hello, this is Joelle. So I guess I'm confused as well then. So are students not reporting tomorrow, or are they? They are not. So a phone call needs to go out if this passes.
Correct.
Okay.
The 14 days starts tomorrow. The first day of the 14 days would be a transition day to allow teachers to prep and distribute materials.
Thank
So
you.
there's
That's what
no-
I wasn't sure of either.
There's no learning tomorrow, virtual or in person.
Correct.
Got it.
Okay. Motion and a second.
So when they go all virtual, is that going to the schedule that they're doing now? They're just obsoleting the in-class day.
Same schedule as they're in right now. The details we'll send the details out. We've got a motion and a second on the table. Andrew, call the question, please.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Steffes,
No.
Sullivan,
No.
Bush,
No.
Chambers.
No.
Motion fails.
I'll make a motion that we go 100% virtual.
Separate football from the motion, so I can go back. So there's one motion to put 3 sports in, and another motion to suspend football.
Okay.
Otherwise, I'll have to abstain and we will get up.
I'm fine with that. I'll make a motion that we go 100% virtual, 14 days. In this motion, we are not going to eliminate extracurriculars. That'll be another motion. With tomorrow being a prep day. Anything else we need to add into that motion?
IEP exception.
IEP exception.
And, well, administration.
We can make the call on staff members,
Yes,
and you
exactly.
use the facilities to promote
Okay.
a good education experience.
We've got a motion.
I'll second Larry's motion.
You're basically repeating my motion, except the part that says no extracurriculars.
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Angie, call the question, please.
Steffes,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
So I'll make another motion that we suspend any regular season games or meets or events. And then we allow soccer, cross country, and volleyball to participate in the tournament, in the WIA tournaments.
We need to define when we can start practice.
And they can start practice for the tournaments as defined by the WIA. Would that be good enough, Amy?
They don't really define.
You'd almost have to allow the practice to take place when it is like their tournament week. You know, so
I'm just wondering if we need to give them X number of days.
Yeah, you would have to give them next number of days. Basically, they would have to continue to practice, I think, this week, maybe take tomorrow off, but, because you have to have three consecutive days? Which, I guess that's if you have a week off, but.
Right.
But their games are starting next week, Tuesday, so you would obviously want to practice the day before.
Is Dodgeville, Ms. Stahl, do you know, is Dodgeville starting up cross country and soccer?
Yes, I had received an email about activities this week.
So if we went down this path, could we ask that students who participate in those games self-quarantine for 14 days so that if they are exposed, 14 days after their last activity, so that if they are exposed, they don't bring anything back into the school? We just restarted in an effort to stem the spread?
Something, yes, Joni, I couldn't agree more.
Well, we'd have to ask the whole student body to self-quarantine then.
Why?
Why?
We're not saying they gotta stay quarantined. We're saying we're locking the doors, and whatever they do outside this building is their business, correct?
Well, I think what Joni is saying is the athletes would stay virtual.
If we're going to allow them to do this.
They would stay out of the school until they've been
I get what
free from commingling for 14 days.
Yes. So after the 10.
We are, by allowing athletics, we are increasing the risk of spread amongst the students and staff and coaches and bringing them back to school and making our problem worse. And putting sports ahead of health is a bad message for our kids and for the community. And
so we're
I know a tournament is fun, and I know athletics are fun. I'm an athlete, right? I stood on the sidelines for the football team for years. I get how much this means to them, but we're in a pandemic. This is serious. We have a problem on our hands, and this calls for drastic measures, and everyone needs to make sacrifices.
Well said.
We're just sending the wrong message with this. I get where your heart is, Larry and Nate. I get where your heart is, and my heart is ripped in two right now, but this is not smart. So if our compromise is to let these kids play for however long you want to let them play, I think it makes sense to, I would have supported, athletes, remain virtual, as long as they're, exposing themselves. But especially where we've got higher cases here and higher risk of spread, I would support, staying virtual for 14 days after their last sporting event, whether it be practice or a tournament or whatever.
Just to clarify, the volleyball program, they're very adamant about keeping their mask on. I witnessed it myself, and they do the best they can. And it's not free for all. There are rules set in place.
I hear you. And that all reduces the risk.
Sure.
It doesn't eliminate the risk. And our hybrid model was designed to reduce the risk. And look where we're at, right? We've still got positive cases. The community is having outbreaks, and we're going virtual.
So in this motion, the board would like to see athletes stay virtual for 14 days after the last practice or event.
Yeah,
If they choose to participate.
From the last time the team meets.
For these 14 days or for the rest of their season? Like, are we saying that?
So whenever their
games have to
last
be virtual
athletic
for the
contest
next
is.
7 weeks?
Say that again.
I get what you're saying.
Okay, tournament starts for 3 of them, and there's been discussion about suspending football for these 2 weeks, so they may not even be in the conversation. But the tournament seasons are going to end at some point. There's 5 weeks of the football season left. So are we concerned for our my question is this for, are we concerned about these 14 days, or are we saying that we want all these kids out of school for 7 weeks?
What I would like to see is if students participate in an extracurricular activity during the window that we've defined as going 100% virtual, that we ask them prior to returning to school that they take a virtual path for 14 days after their last contact. So if we suspend football and do not have football practices or games during that 14-day window, then my expectation would not be that they would have to continue on a virtual path. It's really about creating a clean window.
Excuse me, what about teacher coaches?
I would recommend the same thing.
Yeah.
Teacher, coach, also quarantine. But in other words, what Joni is saying is what we're suggesting is.
And that's what I was trying to clarify.
As long as we're 100% as long as we're 100% virtual, then, if there's any extracurriculars going on.
Yep, and I get that. I just wanted that
from the
very
last
clear whether
event.
it was for the fall sports until they're done playing, or if it was for the 14-day period, because that's very different.
So, and my concern initially was, so you have student A that's non-athlete that could be doing all kinds of things after school.
Correct.
Weekends.
Correct.
Are we going to ask the same of them?
No, because it's not a school sanctioned activity. And I can't police a kid 24/7. But we can control, and that is extracurriculars.
If we're clear to come back in 2 weeks, and which, I mean, I think we're asking more of our athletes than, I don't know, it just doesn't seem, it doesn't seem fair to me, I guess, but I'm okay, if that's what it takes, it is a fair compromise. Because they're only, the high school kids are only 1 day a weekend.
It is not fair to athletes. Quote me on that. This is not fair to the athletes, period.
But
It's not fair to any student.
If you ask them if they would prefer.
It's not fair to the band kids. It's not fair to kids doing the musical. It's not fair to kids doing choir.
Well said.
I think they would all prefer it. I'm giving the 2 choices of their season being over.
We're not gonna allow a choir concert next week if there was one scheduled. Because it's.
This gives me a way to vote yes, because I don't want to take this away from them, but I do feel like just saying, well, we'll make an exception for sports. This at least puts some parameter around it that helps us send a clear message that we are trying to achieve a clean start.
I'm not sure. I don't think so.
Yes.
But there really wasn't a clear motion.
No, we never really had it was.
I was going to make a motion that we allow volleyball, soccer, and cross country to participate in the tournament, but no regular season games or meets. It does not include football. And they practice as defined by the athletic director and Mr. Austin.
Okay. You got anything about?
And they then need to stay 100% virtual for 14 days after their last practice or event.
Okay. So we have a motion.
Is that what you wanted, Joni, in that motion?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, motion. Do we have a second?
I will second that.
Okay, motion and a second. Any more discussion on that motion? No?
I'm glad the quarantine's in there. I'm not going to support it just because I think the feeling I'm getting is that the pandemic is rising and we need to do what we can to limit contact. And I'm glad the quarantine's in there if it passes, but I can't support it.
You've been consistent on the scores about your done, and I know you're a supporter of it.
Yeah, it's killing me to do this. It really is, but it's just. I don't see it.
Motion and a second on the table. Angie, call the question, please.
Okay, so this is to suspend regular season games, but to allow soccer, cross-country, volleyball, and WIAA tournaments and practice as defined by athletic director. And for those athletes to remain 100% virtual 14 days after last practice or event.
Correct.
Cephas,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
No.
Eisner,
Joni?
Yes. Yes.
Oh, sorry, I didn't.
Lindsay,
No.
Chambers.
Yes.
Okay, now you got to talk about football. You want to make a motion, Andy? You can't make a motion. Okay. I'll make a motion that we suspend football for the duration of the 2 weeks.
I'll second that. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Angie, call the question, please.
Cephas,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Abstain.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. All right. Now back on to items for information discussion. This is your fault. We want to hear about phase two.
Do we have our
Are we talking about phase two? Or
Are you talking about Joel?
Yeah.
She will send a message out.
So is there any members of the board that would like to hear the administrator's phase two at this time?
I would like to hear a brief summary, please.
Okay.
So we'll go with Mr. Radovich.
Mr. Emma?
Hello.
Yes.
Hi. Yeah, I can speak real briefly to phase two. The message I was getting was we wanted to look at what 4 days in school would look like and how to do that safely. So we looked at expanding to our typical 3 sections per grade level, and while still offering virtual for those families that would elect to do so. We did send out a survey to determine how many families would go from in-person to virtual or hybrid to virtual if we went to 4 days. It looked like around 19%, which is an increase of about 8%. It's an estimate, but it gave us some rough numbers of what to expect in terms of class sizes. And what we're seeing is that the younger grades, it's not real high. We could probably manage it K2. Where we were seeing, I would say, concerning numbers was more at the 3rd and 5th grade level. We'd be looking at anywhere from 16 to 18 kids per classroom. You're also bringing more adults into the building working directly with kids. You're going from 2 sections per grade in the building to 3. So that just increases your risk. Obviously some benefits and just in terms of having kids in school more, especially at the elementary level. We know that's highly beneficial for those kids physically, socially, emotionally. They just learn better in person. We know that. So, but then, I'm not going to rehash all the concerns that we've had before with more kids in the building. So, just using the reporting tool that was developed by the ad hoc committee to determine when to go to phase two, I think is wise. It's data driven. So yeah, so that's just a brief overview of that. And we can obviously fit them in the building. It would just be a matter of if it's safe to do so. One thing would be that to teach virtual would require potentially more faculty if we had a lot of families going virtual. You could always have them just hop onto a Zoom chat while the teacher's teaching. That gets pretty tough to be doing both at the same time just for 2 days. To do it for 4 is quite a challenge. So I did speak with UW Platteville. We were asked, come up with some creative solutions. 20 years ago, I was an intern at Pecatonica Elementary School. I think they paid me, like $3,500 to. It's like student teaching, but it's you have a little more freedom. You are essentially a teacher in the room. So they would have some interns available potentially. I think the rate now is $4,500 for the semester, but then they can teach one class. So if we were able to bring some of those interns on board, that would help with the virtual aspect versus trying to hire 3 to 4 teachers, at a lot more, and then they're just right now they're really hard to find. We're struggling to even find subs. So yeah, any questions on phase 2?
Do you have any idea what lunch would look like?
It would look similar, I think, to what the middle school, high school is doing, where they have the partitions up, and then they would, with the plexiglass or the shower curtain. I'm not sure which material they use. So we would have to have more kids in the cafeteria. We would potentially, and again, it's all based on the context at the time. If we have very low infection rates, we can be a little bit looser with those requirements. But it would be more kids in the cafeteria, with the mask off, obviously eating together. We did have Sarah Fox and Jane walk the building just to assess each room to give us just what is our capacity at. And that one of the big problem areas was the cafeteria, just because, again, masks are off, people are eating. That's kind of a prime transmission environment. So we might have some classes like one day in their own classroom while they're eating in the cafeteria, then switch. And then how do you supervise that? That would be something we'd have to work out.
Matt, can you talk about how much you explored using other spaces to maybe move a grade, and what the logistics were with that?
Yeah, I think the most promising one offsite was options. You could fit 2 to 3 cohorts out there. The benefits of that are you're not worried about spread, throughout the school. It's set up technology-wise, I think, to make that work. We talked about potentially 4K as one option. And, it's something we're already paying for, so it's, and then options students, I think there's 6, could move to the home ec room in the high school. So it wouldn't be a substantial cost in that manner. Concerns, I was talking with Amanda Heisner, the septic system, how many people is it built for? That was a concern. I don't know the answer to that, but that would be something you'd want to investigate. And then as I was telling the admin team, there's all the other ancillary costs that are just as important. Front office staff. How do you manage a sick child if they come? Where's the office? How does a nurse access that in terms of just more security? Are you trading physical health for less security because you don't have the front office system of buzzing people in and things like that? And I think there will be some additional costs too with just getting resources out there. So we did look at that though as one potential site.
So that's currently not part of your proposed phase 2.
So we talked quite a bit about it. I feel like if we're ready to go to phase 2, And it's safe for some kids to come into the building with bigger class sizes. It should really just be safe for everyone to do that. You know what I mean? It's so moving off site doesn't really, it's not going to reduce class sizes. It's going to just kind of move a group to another site, but you still have 6th grades, sixth grade still in the building, interacting with each other. So I don't know how much, as they say, I don't know what is the juice worth the squeeze, how much benefit are you going to actually get out of one cohort or one grade there or not? It may be minimal, but it's hard to say.
Okay, thank you.
This is Amanda, and I just want to say I think that it would be a disservice to the students that I serve to displace them in the middle of the year. And I do recognize that we could probably make it work, but I also think that there are a lot of reasons why a traditional space has not worked in the past. And so I would just want that to be part of the conversation, if that conversation needs to be had at some point.
Thank you.
Do we have any more questions for Mr. Renwick on phase 2 for the elementary? Now we'll jump into Mr. Austin.
For the middle school, high school, there's not a whole lot of change from, was it a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. I did send out a survey to the high school staff regarding, how the shift would look. Most people obviously favored the phase 1 because we think consistency and routine is probably the best thing for kids. This 2-day-a-week takes away from some of that virtual stuff. I'm still looking at a couple different options. We have a couple different plans right now to get more time back into the classroom. But I do know that majority of the staff feel that in the student's best interest, it would probably be best to stay in that phase 1 rather than try and shift everything for a routine and consistency purpose. As far as everything else goes, the structure of it, a 2-day-a-week would look pretty similar. Like I said, we're working on a couple different options, an 8-period, a 7-period, a 6-period day, just so we can cross every one of those bridges and see what they look like. But I do know not a lot has changed from the last plan that I shared with you. And if there's questions regarding that, please ask. But.
And that would be 2 grades.
2 grades at each
Twice a
level.
week.
So high school and middle school, twice a week. 6th grade would be 4 days a week.
Any questions?
I got a question. Do you guys know how many hours a week per child that they are actually getting school time?
I think the amount of time that a student puts in also depends on very much how they learn, what the structure is that they learn best in, because we have kids that obviously they can take 10 minutes on a task, and we have other kids that'll take an hour on that same task. So I think that's a very up in the air question as far as how many hours are specific students spending on school every day, each day.
Well, I got an 8th grader and a freshman. Freshman is at 11.5 hours. 8th grader is at 10 hours a week. This is what I'm concerned at right here. 10 hours a week. You want to talk about sports and things like that? Isn't there a criteria? Isn't there a criteria even for the child to go to the next grade on so many hours? We're not getting it. An average of 10 hours a week for kids. Come on.
I have a question on that point. If this is somewhat related to phase 2, Matt, that
Yep.
It's really more related to the 100% virtual path. Okay.
But you guys were talking about doing the virtual path and still keeping the same schedule that you have. Well, if you did that, your kids are still only looking at 10 hours a week.
We've got it. Yep, Dr. Dunn's asking the question right now. Travis is probably going in that direction.
So, I just want to clarify Travis's main concern, and his first question of the night was, why can't my kid just log in and just see school like a usual day with the other in-school kids, right? And
Right.
as you were trying to explain, Vicki was trying to explain, that doesn't work with the hybrid model.
Right,
Because you've
the hybrid model is a completely different schedule than what you would see in Skype.
Correct. So the teacher's teaching in person one class, and then they're Zooming another class, and then vice versa. It's not a typical day for the teachers either.
No, every day is different.
But theoretically, in 100% virtual, with the district being 100% virtual, theoretically, you could go back to the normal school day.
Theoretically, but all those students would have to relearn their schedules because that's not the schedule they've been going by.
It'd be a different schedule,
The
correct?
consistency and the routine would change for every kid.
Correct.
So theoretically, yes, you technically could, but I wouldn't suggest that because of the consistency, routine, and what we are structured to do right now. You know, the whole point of setting this hybrid up was if we had to shift the class fully virtual, then that class becomes, you know, they're virtual for their in-person day.
Right.
Then the next week they get to come back because those 14 days are up. So the idea was to make it a synchronous schedule for fully virtual, in-person, not have a kid on a computer for 5 days a week, 8 hours a day. I don't think that's the best thing for a kid to do either.
I get it, and I think that you can make that argument. I mean, obviously, one parent's making an argument that he wants his kids on the computer 5 hours. 6
And I
hours a
understand
day,
that argument.
And another parent is saying, my kid can't hold the attention of that,
Right.
to do that. So I get both sides of that. So, and I don't think there's any doubt that the hybrid model relies a little more heavily on independent learning with these kids. You know, like they do a couple Zoom meetings, and then they've got work that they have to do, or a test that takes either an hour or 10 minutes, a project that takes an hour or 10 minutes, reading assignment that may take an hour or 10 minutes. I get that. And I'm sure some students are getting a little bit of work and some students are getting a lot of work. I'm sure it depends on the subject matter and the teacher. And so I'm sure there's some variability there.
Yep.
I guess, do you feel like when parents contact a teacher or contact you, and I don't mean to pick on you, but you're sitting right there.
You're fine. You're fine.
You know, if a parent reaches out and says, my kid's not getting enough work, I mean, can that be adjusted? You know,
things can always be adjusted. Obviously, we want kids to do what they are getting for work though, to the best of their ability, right? So we want to make sure that we're doing the best of our ability. Yes, we need to adapt more and stuff, but really, we're picking out those boulders. I know we talked about this a couple of weeks. Here are the big things that they need to learn and focus on. Let's make sure they get those. And right now, as Mr. Carey would shared during the ad hoc committee, most of your core classes, your science, your math, your English, your history, they're getting 80 to 90% of that stuff out in this time frame. They're taking those boulders and making it out there, where it's the hands-on or the tech eds, the eggs, where they need more hands-on time in class. That's where we're looking to increase, obviously, more time.
Okay.
But you're talking about structure. This hybrid thing, there's no structure to this. I can't tell you the amount of emails I've gotten and work that has been turned in that the teachers haven't received, or work that hasn't been turned in that I didn't know about, and the teachers couldn't communicate with the child or however it wants to work. I've been struggling since the end of last year with this, and I know I ain't the only parent that has struggled with this. This way here, where if they go 100% virtual, go back to their normal classes, do a half a day. It's better than 10 hours a week, and then you turn around. Again, this goes back to giving them structure throughout their day and holding them accountable for things.
Travis, I'm not trying to interrupt or stop you, and I understand your concerns. Can I call you tomorrow and we can talk about this?
I would like to do it with more than just this one set of ears, if that's okay, because
This is a board meeting upon a board discussion for certain things.
Right now, we're talking more about a personal, I guess.
No, it's not personal. I think a lot of parents would like to see the change of going virtual. Dodgeball's doing virtual 8 hours a day right now.
You can call the administrators to hash out some of this stuff, though. This has more to pertains more to them, and you'll get better answers than discussing this with the board.
I will call you first chance I get tomorrow. Or is there a better time?
No, that'll be fine. The administrators, can we do like a group call then?
You bet.
Dawn and I will certainly call you.
I appreciate it.
Yep.
One point I'd like to make is when things get back to somewhat normal, if we go back to 4 days,
Then we
face to face,
we'd go back to the Skyward schedule.
then we could, Travis, go to more of a typical
Traditional.
live streaming, traditional
Mixed classes and mixed
mixed
grades.
classes. And I think that has a lot of potential for snow days,
We're just not there.
for the flu season,
Right.
for the COVID, if we can control it.
I agree.
I just hear you guys want to, when you guys keep switching it back and forth, it's going to be confusing for the kids and the parents at the same time that are trying to work too. So I just want to throw that out there.
We're going to move on to our next item for discussion, the face mask policy, number 3.
Sounds like Larry.
It was asked to put this on a monthly basis, to put the face mask policy on for discussion each month. I know it's only been 2 weeks, but we are at a new board meeting in a new month. So I didn't know if you would want to have any conversations around the face mask policy, or are you comfortable continuing with our face mask policy the way it's written?
Uncomfortable.
I'm comfortable with it, which is.
Yep. Let's move on. Unless is there any, sorry, Joni and Doc Lindsay, is there any concerns on your part?
No concerns. Let's maintain for another month.
None whatsoever.
All right, we'll go on to the first reading of policy 453.1.
This is a policy for the emergency nursing services. We've had this conversation last week, talking about having a medical advisor, and the medical advisor contract talks about emergency nursing services. Jane and Angie have been searching for some different policies. We went out to WASB, so this is a WASB policy. I shared it with both doctors who are the policy committee, and both doctors recommended this policy moving forward as is. So this would just be the first reading. It would not go into effect until next month when we have the second reading for this policy.
Any discussion on it?
Just to highlight the fact that it says the district shall arrange for a physician to serve as a district's medical advisor for this emergency. So that's what the policy would dictate to the district. So I think that that's part of the plan.
How did we get here with this medical advisor? Is this a recommendation from the county?
Jane said that it was, isn't it
Required of us?
required, I believe.
Yes.
Jane, are you on? And was it required, or Mitch just said yes?
This is a requirement for every school to have a medical advisor and an emergency nursing services policy. It's probably something that was being, Julie was probably providing emergency nursing services as needed, but it's important to have the policy in place.
And I'll admit, especially in my first few years here, Julie would call me periodically about a kid with special needs or a medical issue, and I would just help her out as a volunteer. But there was no conversation like, will you be our medical advisor, or this is your job description. So there was never any kind of official arrangement, but maybe Julie felt like that kind of informal, I've got a doctor's cell phone, that's good enough, But I appreciate.
It's someone to oversee anything that I'm doing or changing at the school as far as policy goes. It's to have someone overseeing me as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got to tell you, when I was working, I was called on an annual basis to act as the school physician. Then I was also requested to try to go to as many football games as I could, and if not, try to arrange for somebody else. So there must have been some sort of policy at one time, whether it was written or not, but I can attest that there was an annual call, would you act as a supervising physician? And then I got called, whether it was scoliosis screening, hearing screening, scabies, you name it. Just so you know, there was that occurring in the past.
I believe Thank you, Dr. Lindsay. I believe that it might have been more of a gentleman's agreement because as far back as we could go define board policy on this, this policy was something that was not anything that was officially adopted by the school board at any time that as far back as we can find. So I think it probably was a gentleman's agreement of, hey, if we call you or can we call you to do these things? So this makes it formal. It makes it part of your board policy.
And I can tell you, it was certainly without pay.
In the policy, Doc, is like a term, if the board selects a medical advisor, is it reviewed every year or upon a request to be reviewed?
Good question. I don't think the terms of the medical advisor agreement are in this policy.
No,
That would be separate.
that's
That would be a separate.
We've drafted something.
It'd be like a job description, not a
Like a
policy.
contract almost.
Yes, we've got
Contract,
we've got some sample contract language to offer up that will run through the personnel committee.
Okay. And just one more question. Do we solicit like a hospital or a specific individual?
Specific individual.
There will be a named person.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
On to the enrollment update.
So our enrollment is basically down one student when you factor in that it's a 3-year rolling average. We probably could have avoided that reduction had we been able to have a traditional summer school. Finishing the school year with virtual and then summer school in essence being virtual, I think there was a lot of virtual flu. It just wasn't something that a lot of families were interested in pursuing. We have a question was asked, and I sent it off to our open enrollment expert. We've had 13 students enroll out due to us proposing a hybrid schedule. 2 of those 13 left after trying the hybrid, but we've also had students open enroll in because of the hybrid. We had a couple students enroll in because their district was going 5 days a week and they preferred to be in a virtual environment. We are still positive on the number of students that open enrolled in versus those that are open enrolling out. But we have, in essence, 760 mineral point students district-wide. But then we lose some of those to open enrollment. So with open enrollments out, open enrollments in, and then you put it in the DPI formula, and what our aid comes on really is 690 students. That's that 3-year rolling average. So they take our enrollments from 18-19, 19-20, 20-21, and right now, last year we were at 691 students we were being aided on. This year it's 690 FTE for the Mineral Point District.
One quick question, Mitch. These students that are leaving after the count was taken the 3rd Friday of September, how does that affect funding? Does the funding go with them students then?
There's another enrollment count in second semester. So the money kind of levels out. We keep the money right now, but it's not like the state gives us $10,000 for a student and then, here's 7 because you went to Dodgeville. They take care of all of those transfers. But the second enrollment, you might pick up a student that moves in, or you might lose another couple of families that move out. So that second enrollment, then they balance that out, and that's where the funding is based on all of that between the 2 enrollment numbers.
Do you stay in contact with the families that have moved out since we went to the virtual plan? And do they ever consider coming back because of other schools going to a virtual model now? I'm just curious.
I have not heard from any of them saying, hey, now that school district B is going all virtual, hybrid, we think hybrid's better than all virtual. You know, no one has reached out to me. I've not heard of any students coming through. Elaine does all of our enrollment information, so she's not shared anybody coming in. We just picked up another student though for that reason. Started today because the school district they went to, or we're going to, is all virtual and staying for quite some time. So now they're here.
Just as an aside, as a superintendent, are you allowed to recruit families into the district? Or is that illegal or just unethical, or?
I would say it's unethical.
Uh-huh.
And
would following up on a local family that left to say, hey, you know, what would you consider coming back? Is that something that is a common practice, or?
I'm not aware of it. I'm not aware that it's a common practice. I would certainly want to make it well known that if we were to shift to a phase 2 that was more in person, or the numbers show, hey, in 2 weeks we're heading back to full time, I would try to make that as well known in the papers and wherever else, but I wouldn't necessarily reach out to the families and try to poach somebody back, because the other part is after that second enrollment date that the state pulls your kind of the third Friday count in the winter, it's actually the second Friday count in January. Then if students come and go after that date, you're either still in the money or out of the money. So if somebody were to leave, say, February 1st, they're still on our rolls, technically. So, you know, there's times that you pick up a lot of students, and sometimes you pick up students that are higher needs in the spring of the year, and you don't get that funding right with them that particular year.
And I don't understand how, you know, how all the funding works, or a student A is here for X amount of time and that, but it does bother me some when the students from our district, whose parents paid taxes to this district, are choosing to go elsewhere. You know, we have to respect their decision no matter what. But I'd like to see us do what we can to try and get those kids back in this district.
Absolutely.
After the September meeting, we had quite a few students open roll out to various ones because they were looking for this board to have some kind of a ruling in September, and it never happened, and we lost some students there. And I don't know how much money that comes to. The amount of students, you know, is 13, and he said we got 2 that came in, so I don't know how much money we're talking. Is it 50 or 60,000 that was budgeted for that we're not going to collect on, or is it higher than that?
2/3, so the school district, the resident school district keeps 1/3 of the funding.
Mm-hmm.
So if it was, I'll just say 12,000, it'll be a little easier. So we would keep 4,000 of that money, and the new district would get the remaining 8,000. So they get that portion of that. Or sorry, did I say that right?
Yeah.
2/3, okay.
So what we used to say, I think, was
we keep 4 and they would get 8.
It was like 7,000 and 3,000 out of 10,000.
So my question is, you know, I don't know where we're going to pull that, where we're going to pull that from. And we're going to have to look at Mr. Renwick's phase 2 plan. Are we going to be able to afford to hire, you know, however many virtual teachers? Because if we're already down on the budget on that, how are we going to be able to afford something else? So something's going to have to give.
Right. Yeah, I would concur with Gary. It's that is something to consider, and that's why I brought up the interns as a potential way to keep the cost down on any kind of staffing we may need. I did want to add, if we were interested in the interns, we would want to act on it sooner rather than later because they're starting placements already. So we wouldn't want to wait too long to see any kind of availability. But it's hard to predict, you know, what's going to happen in the future too. So.
And to that point, the budget that we're going to go over shortly is based on the counts, correct?
Correct.
So you've already accounted for it.
Yeah, it's got the most accurate student information.
For a loss that we didn't actually incur.
Yeah, it has the most accurate information we have available. The unfortunate thing is the 15th is when the state says, okay, now here's really what you're going to have. So the 15th of this month is when we'll get those final numbers in. But based on the current data that we have with that enrollment, that's the budget that's being presented for approval tonight.
So,
Looking at the enrollment for the pre-K for the 2021 year, it's at 55 students, which is going to be one of our larger class sizes again. Do we think that that's the start of a trend, or is that just every few years we have a class that's a little bit bigger?
good question.
I would venture a guess that 5 years from now we'll have a large kindergarten class again after this last spring. You know, kind of that ice storm kind of thing that comes in. No, I don't have any predictors to say, you know, this is a trend.
But we do have data. We have 5+ year data from what in Luke's last year, I think. That I think, Joni, just when the elementary remodel committee was meeting and they were trying to determine what to do with the future of the elementary school, they looked at birth rates and enrollment data, I think at least 5 years out, you know, with the caveat that the further out you get, the less accurate it probably is. But I think if I recall, so we should, you know, have that handy for reference. But I mean, I think if I recall, it looked fairly flat.
Okay.
Now that you say that, I think I remember the number maybe moving 1 or 2 students up or down, but it wasn't.
Yeah. So I would venture to say, based on that, Joni, that spike in pre-K is probably a blip.
Okay.
And I wouldn't expect that. But it is a good sign.
I'm sorry, this is Angie. I would just add that Elaine and I could get you very loose numbers based upon census records that we have for child find on what we have for, you know, 1, 2, 3-year-olds within the district, but those are not 100% accurate by any means. Those are census records that we are able to obtain from registration and moving ins and parents notifying us, those types of things. But we do have some child find numbers that we base some counts on.
So my question, Mitch, was just a point of clarification. So what you've got here in the board book says beginning enrollment for this year at 760 total.
Yep.
And then the 8 is based on, you said 690 or something like that?
Our FTE, yeah.
Our FTE,
Our
okay.
FTE of students is really 690.
That's because pre-K and early childhood are half of.
Yeah, 4/10,
FTE.
5/10.
Early childhood is 4.
Some of these 760 are also open enrolled out.
So the difference between 760 and 690 is all the open enrolled and then like the half FTE, or what was it? It's 0.4?
It's the FTE.
Yeah, 690 FTE. Okay.
And summer school.
And summer
Summer school has nothing to do with these numbers.
It doesn't.
No,
Where's that coming from?
not in these numbers. This is just third Friday count.
In our aid, what we get aided on, it's a 3-year rolling average, and you get your summer school numbers, and you get 40%, you know, so you get 10,000 hours somewhere out there is equal to 1 FTE. So
10,000 hours of summer school?
yes.
Okay.
So our summer school numbers for this past summer were 4. The summer before it was 8. But then you get 40% of that on the 3-year rolling average. So, I mean, we do all these things to have students have great experiences, provide great education, give them summer school opportunities, and then you're penalized to a certain extent because they're giving you a 3-year rolling average, thinking, okay, if you have some drops, this will help cushion the blow a little bit. But if you have an explosion, then it takes you a couple more years to catch up, that funding to catch up to those numbers. There has been some talk about, because of all of the things that are going on, because every school district in the state of Wisconsin has suffered the same that we did, like with summer school, there is being a proposal thrown out there to take your enrollment, give you the opportunity to take the larger of the two numbers, your enrollment from last year or the enrollment from this year. And that would be based on your funding, or that would be what your state aid is based on, is that larger of those two numbers. For us, last year would be just a little bit higher on the FTEs than this year. But I don't know if that'll get much traction moving forward. But based on our enrollment numbers, this is where we are.
And our 3-year rolling average is one student less than last year's 3-year rolling average. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for FTE, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
We talked about it earlier, Mitch. These kids, these families that decided to open enroll to neighboring schools. I don't think it's unethical to send a letter to them to ask them how they're doing, stay in contact with them somehow, some way. I think it'd go a long way. The worst thing we want to have happen is that they like the neighboring school better and then we never get them back.
Will do.
Any more on enrollment? We'll go to budget.
Budget updates. If you see in your packets, salary or the budget expenditures to this point a year ago, we had spent about 20% of our budget through this point in time. This year, that number is about 18.6%. The thing I'm actually a little bit excited about is the fact that because the starting point was different, obviously the budget's higher this year, it equates to a much closer dollar amount that we've spent almost an identical dollar amount from last year to this year, even though there's been, budget increase for this year. So I would say that we're in good shape, good standing as far as our yearly budget expenses. So again, 20% last year at this point in time of the total budget was spent out. This year it's 18.6%. So very, very close dollar for dollar between the 2 years budget-wise.
Any questions on the budget?
Anything we're spending less on because of this unique year?
Subs.
Subs. Less or more?
Less.
Okay.
Angie showed me her desk calendar for the month of September, and there wasn't a day that didn't have multiple subs on it. And then if you look at this year, we don't have very many subs that we have.
October of last year was full of subs, just every day full of subs. And this October, it was remaining, except for the last couple of days.
Part of that is there aren't professional development opportunities for, there's not a conference or not a curriculum expert or something that people are bringing in. So, staff don't have those opportunities right now. And I think a lot of people I don't want to go anywhere because I want to be able to take care of the kids that are in my classroom. So I think that's made a big difference for us as well as far as the number of subs requested, which is good because everybody's sub pool is pretty small right now.
I would add that all the precautions we've taken with, being with masks and social distancing is likely hasn't had an effect on just keeping each other healthy and with all kinds of germs too.
All right. Yeah, that was that. So now any more on the budget update? No questions, concerns, comments? No. All right, let's go on to the action items. Approval of the 2021 budget.
So in your packets or online, you have a budget proposal that is balanced, again, based on all the DPI numbers. So revenue worksheet, some numbers are entered by the district, other numbers are entered by the DPI directly. We have, the cells are basically frozen. We are looking at, like I said, a balanced budget. And based on Property taxes, state aid, it looks like the mill rate will be about 11.86. That's down from 12 per thousand. $12 per thousand will be $11.86 per thousand. If you look at expenditures, and I'm looking at the budget comparison worksheet.
Yep.
If you look at expenditures, if you look down at some of the numbers that have the big jump, obviously debt service went from 590 to 941,000. Last year was a partial referendum payment. This year is a full referendum payment out. If you look at purchase services, that would be an increase in some of our busing costs would come in there. So some of that money will be recouped through CARES money. Some of the lawyer's fees, the audit fees, open enrollment, some of the other contracted services that we have, audiology, OT, PT, some of those services come through there. And when you talked about, Mr. Renwick mentioned interns, if we make a shift and some of the recommendations are in now revert back to, I'll say, normal school year. So if we're not running a third bus in the middle of the day, and we're not necessarily employing 4 teachers at each level, grade level, there will be some extra CARES money that could potentially be spent on the interns as well. So with a positive change in numbers, we could potentially find some additional funding that would allow that to happen. Any questions on any of the reports?
Did the open enrollment actually stay the same?
No. We use that to try to stay as conservative on the budget predictions as possible. When I had last reached out to Elaine, we actually had 100 students open enrolled in and 51 open enrolled out. So that would be a net loss of 2 compared to the number on the budget sheet, because the budget says 93 in and 42 out. We try to leave that one consistent and be as conservative as we can so that.
So does this budget reflect 93 and 42 or 151?
The budget here is the 93 and 42. Yes.
Okay, so aid will drop a little.
It may drop just a little bit.
So to Gary's point with that, so with the net 2 that we lost enrolled out, we lose about 8,000 per student.
Yes, somewhere
Give or
in
take?
7,000, yeah, 7,500, yes.
Okay.
So the one we get for the levy certification will be
accurate.
Okay.
Yeah, that will be, yes.
So you're asking us to approve this, understanding that it's not going to look the same.
There'll be a slight shift based on all of the numbers that we have, plus whatever the DPI releases to us on the 15th. So yes, when you set the levy, that will be the actual dollar amount in the levy.
Is this still based on anticipating a $50 per pupil decrease in aid?
Yes, it was. So there is a little cushion of money without a budget repair bill. There is that cushion could be in there. Yes.
It's my understanding that a budget repair bill hasn't happened yet.
Correct.
Okay. So
we could anticipate a potential surplus.
So in the current budget, we're predicted to get an extra 200 per pupil. The budget that passed last year, state budget?
Like 179.
179, okay.
Yeah. Where I got to 200 was they were originally suggesting you look at a 0 or potentially a $50 reduction, so that pushed it into the
220 range.
Yes.
Okay. So as the current state budget stands, we're set to get 179 per pupil increase.
Correct.
Okay.
And it could, like I said, I don't anticipate it happening
before the 15th.
Before the 15th, but like I said, there was talk about allowing us to take whichever enrollment was larger, but that has to go through, and neither house is in session right now in Madison, so that's not happening. I don't know if they'll come back and try to find the money to do that. I doubt that with the current situation, but no. So basically what you have here is probably our most conservative approach to the budget, as I presented earlier, with them looking at that potential $50 reduction. So you still have that balance with potential surplus, a small surplus in there.
Okay. So there's a very likely potential that come the 26th, when we certify the levy, we might be looking at a significant surplus based on the aid we did with this budget, conservative budget, correct?
Yeah, if you want to define significant, you know, on $1 million budget, is it going to be, you know, multi-million-dollar budget? Is it going to be tens of thousands? Yes, it'll probably be, it could potentially be tens of thousands.
Right, okay. Got it.
Any more questions on the 2021 budget, or does anybody want to make a motion to approve, I should say?
I'll move to approve.
Okay. You want a second?
I'll second.
Second? Go ahead.
So we've got these numbers, and then the 15th we'll get the real numbers, which may include a surplus. Will you build in at that point some of these potential needs for interns or some of the things we talked about into that surplus before lowering the levy amount? So they're in there, so we don't have to take it out of fund balance?
I would, yes.
Okay.
That would be my recommendation, is to
Kind of
presently
identify
plan
that
that budget,
Yeah.
those expenditures. So if there is no change and transportation stays where it is, we may need a little bit extra over what the CARES money would provide, or staffing if we can.
So you'll build some of that in if we have a surplus?
Yes.
So that we don't have to do that.
Right.
Perfect.
Got it.
Thank you.
Yes. That would be my approach to stay away from the fund balance as much as we can to the best of our ability.
Okay. Any more on the budget? Any questions or concerns? Oh, okay, Andrew, call the question, please.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. HSR alternate bid update.
Okay, you had asked Tim Rupert, when he was here the last time, to check into getting the film or the protective panes on the lower levels of those glass windows in the cafeteria. He had gotten something back from Kramer's, and it was basically an increase of $1,848. So it brought that project from $41,000 to $43,042 for those windows, and that would be that protective covering on the lower windows, or ground level windows. You know, I can't tell you I got a crystal ball that I can look at the building project budget and say this is a no-brainer, but I think if this is something that can be done for an additional $1,800, now's the time to do it, because I think it would certainly cost us more to have somebody come in after the fact to try to retrofit.
That would be the quality.
I would agree with that.
Tim, that.
Yeah.
I'll make a motion that we go with that proposal.
Anybody like a second?
I'll second. Can you just explain the gym and the rough-in pending? We were gonna maybe
Yes.
contract that out, right?
I spoke with one of the local tradesmen and got some good information, and then I passed that on. So we are, gonna move on. We're gonna let our local guys do some of that. That way, maybe Booster Club can take care of everything. So they're starting the surgery and they're gonna finish the surgery instead of they're gonna start and you're gonna come halfway through.
Okay, now I get it.
Got it?
Okay,
And
so
there's potential cost savings.
Yes,
Compared to what the
potential
bid
cost
was,
savings.
our local guys could do it for a smaller amount, lesser amount of money.
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
it says pending, but the tentative plan is to reject
remove
it
those.
Yes.
from the current budget.
Yes.
Yes.
Referendum budget. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Larry made the motion and Dr. Dunn second. Any more on HSR? All right, Angie, call the question, please.
Stefas,
Yes.
Sullivan.
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Greenberg.
Yes. I think we're just gonna scratch the phase 2 plan, for now, from the action item, unless there's any, disagreement on that.
I think the only question I have is whether we accept the current draft of phase 2 as this is what our plan, this is what our plan would look like.
As of now.
Pending the numbers.
Yeah, when we refer to phase 2 in the report card, because it says virtual, hybrid, phase 2, fully.
Okay.
At least
So we've heard
people
about
know
it,
what
so.
we're
Okay.
generally thinking.
So,
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's not set in stone, it's,
but this is when it's comfortable, this is what we're gonna do.
this is what phase 2
Okay.
would probably look like.
No, good call there. Would anybody like to make the motion to approve?
I will make the motion to approve phase 2 plan.
And second?
I'll second.
Don't ask me to make conditions.
No, I'm looking at Mr. Austin. I mean, can you work with Joelle maybe to just, when parents or communities say, well, what the heck is phase 2, just to have that maybe in the blueprint?
I will tell you
Or
that
something?
at this level, it's probably harder to shift back and forth between phase 1 and phase 2. So it really be nice if it's just, this is the hybrid model we're using at the high school, middle school. If we do shift to a phase 2, or if we change things around, because it is harder just because of the consistency to shift back and forth with that. Just so you're all well aware, at this level, it might be a little more difficult to shift back and forth. But I can certainly work with Joel on that.
And I think what came up in the conversation at the last committee meeting was, so if we went from our current hybrid and the numbers were great, so we went to our phase 2, and then in that model, had to go virtual. When we come back, what are we coming back to?
Right.
Are we gonna come back to the hybrid and start over again, like, Monopoly, go back to gold? But I think the recommendation would be, if we can be in phase 2 for a few weeks and establish that routine, if we have to go virtual, we would come back at phase 2. We would come back at that higher level of student engagement. So that,
at this level, consistency and routine is the best thing possible.
so I think when Matt's talking about switching it, he's talking about, do we go hybrid 1, hybrid 2, hybrid 3, hybrid 6? It's, if we can get to phase 2 and stay in that for a couple weeks and build that routine, and then we're out, we would come back to phase 2.
But I will continue to collect data on phase 1, phase 2, just so we have all the things of what that looks like at this level, because it is a little bit different, obviously, with more teachers that can only teach certain classes.
And I think just having something to post to alleviate the concerns that the board refuses to pass phase 2 and post something because then you have to act on it. This way it's approved and posted, and when the time comes, it's ready for us.
Sure. And I do think, for the sake of argument, I think it's reasonable down the road to say we're going to either go 100% virtual, 100% in person, 5 days a week, or something in between.
Right.
I think it's reasonable for the board to decide 3 options instead of 2 versions of a hybrid.
Right.
So I think just.
Yeah, I can certainly work with Joel, and we can work on something like that.
Because there are budget implications to phase 2, do we need to think about how we cover those expenses, or is that when we get to that point we'll figure it out kind of question?
I believe that I believe some of the shift would free up money to allow some of those other concerns, to cover some of those other cost concerns. So if we drop from 4 sections to 3 sections and we don't run that third bus in the middle of the day, there could be potential cost savings there that would offset increases in other areas.
We would still need to hire extra staff probably under phase 2.
Potential interns, as Mr. Renwick had Sure.
Okay.
I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there wouldn't be any additional hires at the middle school, high school level. So, because it's just increasing the class load or course load or whatever for the staff. But,
Okay.
but potentially in order to try to maintain smaller numbers, or the option to social distance as best as we can with phase 2, it would probably require some interns.
I just want to say, I mean, I appreciate the work the administrators have done to kind of come up with a phase 2 that seems feasible and potentially doable. I get the logistics of flipping back and forth, so I'm sensitive to that. But maybe we can spend the next few weeks just estimating how much a phase 2 would cost us in additional money. In terms of how many interns, busing, cost for savings, just to give us a general idea of this is the price tag for phase 2, the way we want to implement it.
Sure.
You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't see us getting there very soon, but be nice to know what the financial ramifications of that would be.
I can work on that.
All right. Any more on the phase 2 plan? And we have a motion and a second. So, Angie, call the question, please.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. On to business services, credit card statement of activity and bills payable. Anybody like to make a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve both.
Okay, we approve both. We have a second.
I'll second it.
Larry beat you, Doc.
Okay.
Any questions, concerns on bills? Payable? Nothing? All right, Angie?
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Stefas,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes. Would anybody like to make a motion to convene into closed session?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, we have a motion.
I'll second it.
Second, do we have to roll call on that?
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
for the purposes of evaluation, correct?
Yes, for the purposes of,
19.851C.
yep.
Stefas,
Yes.
Sullivan,
Yes.
Bush,
Yes.
Dunn,
Yes.
Eisner,
Yes.
Lindsay,
Yes.
Chambers.
Yes.
So Dr. Lindsay and Joni, I will send you a new Zoom link for closed session.
Okay.
Thank you.
The table.